So welcome all. I'm sure this is either you found this through Jacob's server
Hiccup.
or you just decided that, hey, this video is on this guy's page. I want to watch it because I like stories. This is a story about an NPC in a campaign that I am in. It's called The Disturbance. Best
A
NPC
D&D
ever.
campaign.
SD&D campaign, not an actual real life campaign. We're not campaigning anything. Um, But great character. Jacob put a lot of work into this. I read it. I loved it. And then I bullied my good friend E here into reading it. And they said, "Oh, I'll read it, but we should do it on stream." And then I figured that was cool, and I compile it and I put it all into a long video, so that anybody who doesn't like to read can listen to us read it. This is E's live reaction to the whole thing, and my second time over. So there's that
Yeah.
too.
This isn't really my live reaction to this chapter because I did technically read this chapter through off stream
Just not
because
very
I was
serious.
yeah, I
Just not.
was I was very unserious with it and then I was like, wait, this shit kinda slaps.
And you were hoping that he was here. Look who's here. He's here.
Jacob!
Just as we were about to start too.
Oh my god, K-Cop, we're reading chapter one.
I have to do like 13-year-old practice here. I have a voice crack somewhere.
Alright, are we ready?
I am ready. When you are
Okay.
ready, you can begin.
Who's coming? Alright,
Who's coming?
here we go. The air was crisp and clean. The sounds of flowing water and crickets were the only noises to be heard. By the banking of the river sat two dragonborn, both colored blue. The younger dragonborn was sitting by the edge. His feet dipped into the water as he watched the fish swim by. The older one watched the distant horizon while holding a fishing rod. Its line was held in the water, but no fish were biting. Sorry, kid. I didn't mean to miss your birthday. Happy late birthday, Praxis, the older dragonborn said, not able to look down at his son, who was still absently kicking his feet into the stream.
It's okay, Dad. I know you're all fighting. It's important, I know. I'm just glad when I do get to see you.
I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea if that's the voice I've been doing for Jackdaw. It's been a fat minute, but anyways.
Continue. It has.
Praxis spoke, finally looking up at his dad, who still stared off into the distant horizon. The Big 13. You know what that means, right? His father spoke. His voice was monotone, but cracked a little on the final word. Praxis knew exactly what this meant. Initiation into the Plasmite Army. Military. Fuck. Military service was inevitable and something that he had been preparing for all his life. He knew the drills off by heart already. His dad being a general meant he had to.
When do I join up with the plasmites?
Praxis responded, his legs finally stilling as he looked up at his father. Tomorrow. I came home to collect you. This is the final time you'll see me as a father, and not as General Jackdaw. His father replied, finally looking down at his son. His eyes were slightly wet, though Praxis didn't understand why. Surely this was a good thing. It was what he was born to do. Jackdaw looked back at the horizon. He couldn't face his son. Couldn't tell him all of the horrors that awaited him on the battlefield. Couldn't bear the thought of losing him. He simply never got to hold the line, and he wasn't sure. What? He simply passed Praxis the fishing rod and let him hold it for a while. Praxis was elated by this. He never got to hold the line, and he wasn't sure why he was getting to do it now, but he wasn't going to complain. Jackdaw simply watched the fish, but before long he heard his son yelp. A fish caught the line. He suddenly kneeled down to his son and held his arm steady, helping him slowly guide the fish in while also giving him steady and clear instructions. Praxis always enjoyed fishing, so it came naturally to him. All the time watching his father must have paid off as long as before long the fish was caught. Holding it aloft as his prize trophy, Praxis's smile was the biggest it had been all day. Jackdaw couldn't help but be proud. He knew this would be one of the last times Praxis would be happy for a long time.
I'm the best at this. Maybe I could be a fisherman when I leave the military.
Praxis proclaimed. He was dead set on making this a reality. Jackdaw's chest felt heavy as he watched Praxis fiddle with the hook, trying to get it out. He finally managed it, and he bounced on his heels slightly at the triumph. Maybe, son. Maybe, Jackdaw said, his gaze firmly set on his son, like this was the last time he'd ever see him like this. Praxis let the fish go back into the water, giving it a big wave as it swam off. Come on, kid. We better be getting back home unless you want to get shouted at by your mom, Jackdaw half joked, reaching his hand down for Praxis to take. Praxis hesitated for a second before taking it. He wasn't quite ready to leave the river, but understood it was probably getting a little late. As they walked, Jackdaw kept his eyes firmly on the route ahead. He was torn between watching his son for every second he could and not being able to look at him, knowing soon his child would never be the same again. As the boys approached the small homestead, they spotted a woman waiting by their small home. She was a blue dragonborn and was wearing a simple cream-colored dress. She was known by both Praxis and Jackdaw.
Mom!
Praxis shouted, letting go of his dad's hand to run over to his mother. She scooped him up in her arms and gave her son a tight hug. Giggling softly, she finally looked up at Jackdaw. She saw the pain in his eyes, and she stopped giggling, just squeezing her son a little tighter. She finally let him down. All right, Praxis, come on. Head inside and watch your brother, she said gently as Praxis gave her an enthusiastic nod and headed inside. She walked over to Jackdaw and stood with her arms crossed a few feet away from him. So, you're taking him from me, Jack? She said harshly, her eyes narrowing at her ex-husband. It's not like that, Barb. You know I don't want to do this, he said, his voice deflated and defeated. Neither of them wanted this, but neither had a choice. She stared at him as he looked down at the ground, unable to look her in the eye. I'm sorry. It's the law, he spoke again, scratching his scales on his arm anxiously. Not much scared Jackdaw, but his ex definitely did. She let out a long sigh before speaking again. I know, Jack. I know. Come on, let's enjoy one more family meal before. Her voice breaking and leaving the sentence unfinished. Jackdaw knew what she meant. He didn't need to hear the rest of the sentence to know. He took a step forward as she swiveled around and started walking towards the house. He stood still after the step for a second longer, watching her go inside. Finally following her in, he saw Praxis holding his little brother. He was barely 6 months old. Praxis was still struggling to hold him. Praxis was never the strongest child, and he still wasn't now. His mother came over and scooped his brother out of his arms. Praxis let out a breath of relief and went back to his usual smiling self. He started to help his mother set the table. The entire house was filled with the aroma of cooking beef mixed with sage, rosemary, and thyme, which flooded Jackdaw's nostrils. He let out a small sigh filled with nostalgia. He missed this dearly. Jackdaw couldn't do much but sit by the door and was hesitant to help. Barbara and Praxis worked so well together as a team, checking on the baby and filling bowls. It filled Jackdaw with a sense of both pride and loss, but above all else, guilt. Jackdaw slowly walked forward and takes his seat at the head of the table, feeling out of place here in this peaceful home. Praxis came up to him with his filled bowl of beef stew and placed it in front of him, giving his dad a quick hug before going back to take his own bowl of stew. Barbara took her place next to the baby with her own food. She took a smaller portion for herself, which made Jackdaw frown. The meal was quiet, a little too quiet. The mood was so awkward and nobody really wanted to say anything. But finally, Praxis spoke up.
So, Dad, I've been working on my breath attack. I'm pretty sure I got a spark the other day.
Praxis beamed as he stood up quickly, nearly spilling the stew in front of him. It earned a stern look from his mother and a quiet chuckle from his father. Praxis was clearly expecting to be told off as he immediately looked over at his mother, but her stern look softened as she watched him for a few seconds. It's fine, baby. Just be a little more careful, His mother spoke, and he gave a quick nod before sitting back down to eat. Both Jackdaw and Barb looked at each other for a second in recognition. Praxis's breath weapon was a topic of many of their chats in the past, mainly because as far as they were aware, he didn't have one. Even blue dragonborn babies have the occasional accidental breath of lightning, but for Praxis, never. Not a single time has he ever shown the ability to use it, or if he even has one.
Oh, that's good, kid. Maybe one day you'll have full control over it.
Jackdaw said with almost zero belief, but if his son believed, he wasn't going to try to crush it. Seemingly happy with that answer from his dad, he went back to eating. The rest of the meal was finished in silence. When the meal concluded, Praxis helped his mother collect the bowls and cutlery and started helping wash everything. Jackdaw went over and watched his other child, Praxis's baby brother. Thoughts raced through Jackdaw's mind, looking down at the child. Would he ever meet his brother again? Would Praxis even be alive? Would he even be alive to see his son again? The thoughts were too much to bear for Jackdaw as he turned around and walked out of the house without another word, slamming the door behind him and walking over to the fence on the outskirts of the property. He gripped the fence hard, trying to focus on anything other than how bad he felt, but to no avail. Tears streaked down his eyes, following the grooves in his scales and down parts of his muzzle.
Dad, are you okay?
A voice came from behind him. Praxis. Jackdaw turned and looked down at his son, dropping to one knee and pulling his son into a hug. Praxis was a little confused. He was going to be a soldier like his dad. He never saw it as a bad thing, but this is the first moment he felt scared. That maybe this wasn't all it was cracked up to be.
I'm okay, son. I'm okay. I love you. I need you to know that.
Jackdaw said, pulling back from the hug and holding his son by his shoulders.
Of course, Dad. I know, Dad. I love you too.
He said, giving his dad a reassuring smile, which did nothing to stop Jackdaw's tears. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. Jack.
This isn't funny.
Jack-
Lock in.
Jackdaw simply pulled Praxis into a deep hug again, making sure he couldn't continue to see him cry.
All right. Come on, kid. It'll be close to your bedtime, and
Jackdaw paused, unable to continue anymore.
I lost where we were.
And?
And
Praxis asked. Neither of them let go of the hug.
you've got a big day tomorrow.
Jackdaw finally finished and let go of his son, standing up and reaching for Praxis's hand, which he took. They walked back towards the house as Praxis let out a loud yawn, clearly very tired. As they walked in, they saw Barb rocking the baby to sleep. Jackdaw guides Praxis to his room, and Praxis lets go of his hand to jump into the bed, snuggling into the bed and pulling the blanket up to his muzzle.
So, does your mom usually read you a story or something?
Jackdaw said, eliciting a giggle from Praxis. He shook his head and said,
no, Dad. I'm not a baby anymore.
still smiling at his father. Jackdaw gave him a somber smile. The last time he saw Praxis to bed, he was just a baby, at least to him anyways.
All right, kid. Good night. I love you.
Jackdaw said as he stood up and walked over to the door.
Love you too, Dad.
Praxis said before closing his eyes and snuggling into bed fully. Jackdaw stood watching him by the door for a few more seconds before leaving. This would be the last time he saw his son as his son and not a soldier. He walked out and saw Barbara dusting the shelves. Her eyes looked detached. Neither said anything to each other. Jackdaw just looked down at his feet, unable to look at his love. He couldn't bear to look anyone here in the eye.
You're not staying here tonight.
Barbara finally said, not looking over at Jackdaw. It was a last-ditch attempt to get him to leave, for him to not take away her son. But it didn't matter.
That's okay. I'm staying at the inn in town. I'll be back in the morning for Praxis,
he said matter of fact. Walking over to the front door, he stopped, his hand clutching around the handle like a lifeline. He hated this. Hated himself most of all, but he couldn't do anything. He'd be hung for treason. All he could hear were the quiet sobs of his ex-wife as he finally pulled down the handle and walked away from the house. The walk into town was slow, the air cool, and the sky dark. He took a deep breath and walked inside the inn and went up to bed. He didn't eat or drink. He wanted to get everything over with. Sleep didn't come for Jackdaw that night. He couldn't, not with what was happening the day after. He got up from bed in the morning and walked out of the cozy inn, his eyelids half closed as he yawned constantly. Oh my gosh, my fault.
Reenactment.
Finally, finally reaching the homestead, he spotted Praxis and Barbara hugging. Praxis was all dressed in his military uniform. It was showy, as all the new recruits' uniforms were, but it still made Jackdaw's heart break as he approached them. He could already hear his ex crying as she held Praxis tightly. She really didn't want to let him go, and Praxis held on to her just as tightly. Finally hearing Jackdaw's approach made Barb pull back from Praxis, though her eyes never left her son.
All right, Praxis. It's fine now. Promise me something, my son,
She said, looking Praxis in the eyes.
Anything, Mom. Anything. Why did I get country?
You're my son.
I'm so country.
Praxis managed to say through his own tears.
When things get too much, and when you're alone, come home. I'll always be waiting for you.
She spoke clearly. She needed to make sure he knew he always had a place here, that he didn't need to be alone if he didn't have to be.
Okay, Mom. I promise.
He said, wiping his tears away from his eyes. It was all finally hitting him how real everything was, how he'd never see his mom again. Jackdaw cleared his throat, finally drawing the attention of both Barbara and Praxis. He straightened up and stepped back into his general persona. He couldn't be the boy's father anymore. He had to make the change now before he could never make the change.
Praxis, come here.
Jackdaw spoke, his voice rough from lack of sleep, but still way more commanding than Praxis was used to. Praxis let go of his mother and walked over to Jackdaw, stopping 5 feet in front of him and looking up at him.
Are are we leaving, Dad?
Praxis said nervously. His eyes drifted back to look at his mother, who was now staring at the ground with her hands over her eyes.
Yeah, Praxis, we're leaving. And it's General Jackdaw now, not Dad. Understood?
No.
He said sternly. No. He said sternly. His emotions are well hidden behind the veil. Praxis flinched as his father spoke. He prepared for this. He knew it was coming, but it still caught him off guard.
Understood, sir.
Praxis said loudly, standing up straight and trying his best to keep his composure.
Good, soldier. Come on. Let's meet up with the others.
Jackdaw commands as he turns and begins walking away. Praxis looks back one final time at his mother, who gave him a wave. Behind General Jackdaw, keeping up with him is... Oh, shit. Who gave him a wave, unable to keep her tears in check. He turned away as his own tears began. He walked behind General Jackdaw, keeping up with him as much as he could. They marched for hours without any words between them, which for Jackdaw was preferable. He couldn't speak anyway, as his own tears flowed every few minutes before quickly being schooled away. They started walking down through woods until reaching a large clearing. Makeshift barricades had been set up as the woods had been cleared. They had finally reached the plasmite training camp. Jackdaw came to a sudden halt to which Praxis wasn't expecting. He tumbled forward over the general's tail and barely managed to catch himself, to which Jackdaw just looked down at him and chuckled a little. He hit it quickly, though. He had to remain professional no matter what from now on. The gate opened for them as both Praxis and Jackdaw entered. There were tons of officials from the plasmite military all waiting for Jackdaw, and more importantly, a bunch of new recruits all waiting lined up. Jackdaw gestured for Praxis to take his place among the recruits, which he did. He stood awkwardly at the edge of the other kids. They were all the same age as him, and some looked just as nervous. Jackdaw stood up on the makeshift stage and looked over all the new recruits that had joined. There were exactly 100 of them. He took a deep breath as he looked over the crowd of people before speaking.
Hello, all. My name is General Jackdaw. As many of you have been in the military since you were babies. Others have just joined up.
He paused to look over at his son before quickly looking back over the crowd.
As many of you know, plasmite generals are given 100 recruits and don't get any more soldiers. It's a true test of skill and survival. So I trust you'll put your faith in me, because I'll have to put my faith in all of you.
He gave it a few seconds to let the words sink in before continuing, his eyes keeping drifting back to Praxis.
Many of you will die. We have 100. By the time you're all 18, expect that number to be way lower. The people next the people next to you are your new brothers and sisters, and I hope your new family.
He concludes, looking over the recruits one final time before dismissing them to their barracks. Chapter 2, 3 years later, First Contact. This is like, hang on, sorry. Like an old.
Jackdaw, he's underperforming by miles. Should have signed him up sooner,
Spoke Commander Carlyle, looking sternly over at Jackdaw, who stood on the other side of the war table. The tent they were in was big, with 4 open sides letting the sunshine orange light in at the lower angle it was at. Jackdaw leaned down and placed his hand on the table to brace himself before speaking.
I'm aware, Commander, but it's not like he can catch up. He's 16. He's not a lost cause,
Jackdaw said, pleading a little.
Tell me, Jack, when was the last time he used his breath? When was the last time he didn't place last? You're sentimental. He's your son, I understand, but it's not enough. He'll be discharged soon if he doesn't improve,
He said with finality, making Jackdaw hide his head a little more by looking further down at the map in front of him. Jackdaw was hoping for this, a chance for his son to be discharged early. He could go home. He didn't have to suffer like he did.
I agree, Commander. I'll talk with him.
Jackdaw said, trying to keep his voice somber and not let the excitement show. I'm not gonna lie, I forgot the voice I did for Jackdaw, so I'm making it up right now.
No need just yet, Jack. Performance reviews are in a month. If he isn't slightly better by then, he'll be shipped back home,
He said before Jackdaw could get up and leave.
We have bigger fish to fry anyways. As you know, Coven Ridge is a key point for the Nephthalites. You, Percy, and Lincoln's squad are to deal with it.
Carlyle said, placing down 2 more playing cards on the table he used to represent each squad. He looked up at Jackdaw and pulled the card representing his squad back a little to the back lines. The intention was clear. Jackdaw's squad had suffered the most of the losses, so they'd be taking the sidelines on this one for the most part.
Speaking of which, the Percy squad suffered a couple casualties and are mourning their fallen. They ran into a Nephthalite patrol and fought well. There was a gold captain, but he got away, however. They did capture a lieutenant. He's refusing to talk, so good luck, 'cause he's your problem now.
Commander Carlyle says, taking a step back from the war table, letting Jackdaw plan the rest.
The Nephthalite is in the tent on the eastern side of the camp. Praxis is guarding it. I'm off to check in on Percy's squad. Dismiss, Jackdaw,
Carlyle said, giving Jackdaw a salute, which Jackdaw returns. After Carlyle leaves, Jackdaw lets out a massive sigh, letting all the tension from his meeting seep away from him. He picks up the 2 playing cards, an ace of spades and an ace of clubs, with the last card being the ace of hearts representing his own Jackdaw squad. He pockets all 3 cards to plan with later as he begins to walk over to the eastern side of the camp to interrogate the captured Nephthalite. He sees Praxis leaning against a tree by the tent, staring off into space and spinning his flintlock rifle as Praxis always does.
Praxis, attention, add attention.
Jackdaw barked at him, which made Praxis startle and stand up straight.
Yes. Sorry, sir.
He shouted almost a little too loudly. He must have been really far gone in thought. Jackdaw waved his hand for Praxis to follow him inside the tent. Praxis was still short at 5'5" and probably wouldn't grow any more. His tail was decently big. The tip dragged across the ground as he walked. His hips were slightly wider than his shoulders, and he still had some muscle definition, but definitely not as much as any of the other soldiers around. Inside was the promised captured Nephthalite, still wearing his armor, though his weapons had been stripped away. He was a red dragonborn and was quite bulky, broad shoulders with scales that appeared jagged in place. He was also wearing a bracelet that looked like 2 rings connected by charms made out of silver. He looked rough with his right eye bloodshot. Percy's squad clearly hadn't let him get away without killing 2 of theirs for nothing. He stared up at Jackdaw and Praxis, snarling at them quietly before they had walked inside. Fully, Jackdaw sat down in the chair on the opposite end of the small table from the red dragonborn. Meanwhile, Praxis stood by the tent entrance, his flintlock rifle on clear display for the Nephthalite to see.
So, my name is General Jackdaw. You are?
Jackdaw began, hoping to at least get a name from the Nephthalite. The only response he got back, though, was a louder snarl, his tail flicking violently behind him in annoyance. However, Jackdaw remained calm, not giving in to the outburst. He repeated asking his name a few more times with no success. After a couple minutes of trying, only to be met with deep snarls, Jackdaw let out an annoyed sigh and stood up from the chair.
Praxis, I'm gonna go for a coffee. Keep your eye on him.
Jackdaw says, slightly defeated by the stubbornness of the Dragonborn. Praxis gives him a nod as he steps out of the tent, leaving him and the Red Dragonborn alone. The Red Dragonborn just stared at Praxis, making Praxis shuffle on his feet, feeling uncomfortable.
Can you stop staring at me? It's awkward.
He finally managed to say, looking anywhere but at the person across from him. He glanced back after a few seconds, and to his dismay, he was still being held in a death stare.
Look, please, just stop. It's weird and the general, my dad.
Praxis was suddenly cut out by a shocked laugh, escaping the person across from him. Ha ha ha! I'm so sorry. Finally breaking his stern and unforgiving look.
Your dad? Your general is your father? That's hilarious.
Said the Dragonborn finally, the first thing he spoke since getting here.
Oh, so you do speak. And yeah, so what if he is?
Praxis retorted, placing his gun against the side of the tent so he could cross his arms and lean over to the side slightly for emphasis. Such a diva. The angry expression had vanished from the man sitting across from him, his arms coming up and crossing over, mimicking Praxis, while a cocky grin appeared on his muzzle.
So, if you're so talkative now, mind telling me your name? Nephthalite scum doesn't quite roll off the tongue.
Praxis continued, the insult clear but not having much of an effect.
It's Napalm, and I'm only telling you 'cause you're cute.
Oh shit, this is the guy, he said without hesitation, making Praxis blush and stand up straight, clearly taken back by the statement. Wait, can I change his voice? I want to change his voice for the next line.
Okay.
I didn't realize this was a guy. Sorry.
Shut up. And Napalm? Seriously? That's what your parents named you? Your parents roll a dice to decide on your name?
Praxis retorted in an annoyed tone. This seemed to finally put a dent in Napalm's armor as his cocky smile faltered and he looked back at Praxis annoyed.
It's a strong Nephalite name. It's accurate too. My fire burns brighter than any petty lightning you could produce.
Praxis immediately took a step back, his face turned to shock as he felt the familiar sting of embarrassment that came whenever anyone mentioned his breath weapon. Of course, he could produce fire brighter than his lightning. He couldn't produce any.
Actually, I can't produce lightning, so... Shut up!
Praxis said defensively, backing up further until his back hit the side of the tent, his eyes firmly locked on his feet by the floor. Napalm's gaze hadn't left Praxis, and he could clearly tell how much he had affected him. He didn't know why, but he felt bad about clearly embarrassing the coy blue Dragonborn.
Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you.
Napalm said, the disbelief in himself at his own words evident as he looked down at the table after finishing speaking and shaking his head.
You're sorry? Why?
Praxis said back, looking up at Napalm, who was still looking down at the table. He took a second to reply, his fist clenching slightly as his silver bracelet jingled slightly.
I don't know. You're cute. I don't like embarrassing cute guys.
Oh! Stop! Hang on, I'm sorry.
See, I love them so much. I love them so much!
Napalm said, not looking up at Praxis a single time while he spoke. Praxis was almost as red as Napalm's... Praxis was almost as red as Napalm's scales, and instead of replying, he walked out of the tent, slightly overwhelmed and confused. He took a breath of fresh air, clearing his mind before the panic hit him. He left his rifle in the tent with Napalm. He turned and rushed back in to find Napalm standing. He was half a foot taller than Praxis, and more importantly, he He held Praxis's flintlock rifle in his hand. They both stare at each other for a solid 10 seconds before Napalm simply hands the rifle back to Praxis. You, forgot this, he said casually, like he wasn't debating shooting him and running away in his mind. Praxis took the rifle back apprehensively, his fingers brushing against Napalm's scales. Ooh! Napalm froze slightly from the contact but kept his cool as he immediately backed up and scratched the back of his head before sitting down again. They both remained quiet, not looking at each other until finally Jackdaw returned with coffee. As he walked in, he was surprised to see Napalm looking up, and a little confused to see Praxis staring firmly down at his feet.
Well, any updates, Praxis?
Jackdaw asked before taking a long sip of his coffee and sitting down.
Nothing, General. He's remained
You're-
silent the whole time.
Look, Praxis replied. He's not sure why he lied, but he felt he had to. Napalm hadn't judged him, which everyone else had done for his breath weapon. He owed him this at least.
So, are you finally going to tell me your name, or are you still going to be difficult?
Jackdaw said to Napalm, set his coffee down on the table, and, like expected, Napalm said nothing in return. At least there was no snarling, which to Jackdaw was an improvement. After a series of questions on rank, plans, structure of movements, and patrols, to which none received an answer, Jackdaw had enough and stood up abruptly once his coffee had been drunk and emptied.
Alright, come on, Praxis. I'll have Link keep an eye on our friend here,
Jackdaw said, eyeing Napalm, who still hadn't looked away from the table yet. After he had left, Napalm finally looked up at Praxis, who blushed slightly before quickly rushing after Jackdaw. Focus. As they began walking to the barracks, Jackdaw spoke.
If he isn't speaking tomorrow, we'll probably have to execute him. Shame. He could have been useful.
Rubbing his temples slightly as he spoke. Praxis stopped walking for a second in shock before catching up, which didn't really surprise Jackdaw. He was used to his son's reactions to news, even something as small as this.
Alright, you're dismissed for the night. I'll speak to Lynx. Night, Praxis.
Praxis gave a salute before walking into the barracks and stashing his rifle away in the weapon rack. Praxis laid down in his bunk, closing his eyes and trying his best to fall asleep, his tail awkward as it lashed out the side of the bed, annoying a few other soldiers who were trying to sleep. Is Termia a male or female, do you think?
I think female, if I
Okay.
recall correctly.
Praxis! For fuck's sake, calm your tail down. I'm trying to sleep. Termia's voice called out, which made him wince.
Sorry.
He called out embarrassed before sitting up on the edge of the bed. He took a deep breath, debating with himself about going back to sleep or going to to go and warn Napalm. He had no reason to, but something about him made his chest feel tight. He wanted to figure out why, so he sat up and walked out of the barracks and towards the east side of camp. When he approached the tent, Lynx was sitting outside on the grass, fiddling with her flintlock pistol, moving the hammer and forth. It's a miracle she hadn't accidentally fired it. So moving the hammer back and forth. It's a miracle she hadn't accidentally fired it.
By the way, Termina's a male.
Jimmy's a male?
We fucked that up.
Ah,
We
shit.
gotta go bald.
Okay, this one's a female, though. This one's a female.
Yeah, Lynx is think like really
yeah.
insomniac crackhead. Sarcastic insomniac crackhead is how I would describe Lynx.
Okay, fuck. Oh,
You got this.
Hey Prax, what's up? She said as he approached, looking up at him with the pistol barrel pointed towards her own chest with the hammer cocked.
Jeez, Lynx, don't shoot yourself, come on.
He said, warning her of the sudden danger. She looked down and noticed before quickly turning it away and letting out a nervous chuckle. Thanks, that would have been embarrassing, she said, looking away, trying to look for something to change the subject to.
You tired, Lynx?
Praxis cut in before she could find something. She simply nodded. She looked awful. Her insomnia had always been bad, and being put on night watch constantly wasn't helping her.
Go on to bed. I'll keep watch on Napalm.
Praxis said casually, to which Lynx looked up at him slightly confused, but shrugged and got up, not about to argue about a chance to catch some sleep. As she began to walk away, she turned and said, "Oh, Prax, how did you know his name?" Thought he wasn't talking. She was looking at the back of Praxis's head, and it was a good thing she couldn't see his face, because the shock would have elicited more suspicion. "Actually, I don't care. I'm too tired. Go enjoy taking my shift, you weirdo." She finished waving her hand at him as she walked and continued to stumble away, still fiddling with her pistol. Praxis waited until she was out of sight, then slipped into the tent where Napalm was still on the chair, though he was asleep, snoring softly. Praxis just watched for a few seconds, feeling that new feeling in his chest again. He took a deep breath and walked over to the chair and kicked it, startling Napalm awake. He lunged forward instinctually at Praxis, knocking the small table backwards as he tackled Praxis to the ground. He held his wrists in a vice-like grip as he snarled at him like a wild animal, which made Praxis cry out in pain. Finally, Napalm's golden eyes locked onto Praxis's dark green ones, which made him stop snarling and his grip getting looser. He stayed like that for a moment longer before Napalm rose to his feet and reached down for Praxis to take his hand, which he did. After he had helped Praxis to his feet, they stood holding hands for a moment longer than necessary, until finally Praxis pulled away. "Sorry, I didn't know it was you," Napalm said, scratching the back of his head, which was clear to Praxis was the nervous thing. Praxis giggled slightly and said,
It's all right. Listen, do you plan on speaking tomorrow?
to which Napalm squinted at him defensively, took a step back, crossing his arms over his chest and shaking his head no.
Right. Well, that means they're gonna execute you.
Fuck. Praxis said, rushed. He could see Napalm immediately tense up. He looked scared and worried, which wasn't helped by the fact he then started to pace back and forth inside the tent. It was more than clear he hadn't thought of this as a possibility.
Calm down. Listen, I'd rather you not get executed, so let me help you escape.
Praxis said, hunched forward a little with his hands up, like that would somehow make Napalm calm down. But surprisingly, he did. Or at least he stopped pacing and stared at Praxis frozen. "You'd help me? Why?" Napalm said, looking at Praxis dead in the eyes, searching for any sign of deception or trick that this was some plasmite game they were playing on him. But he saw nothing, just the genuine offer of a random man he met.
I just want to help. You lost your squad. You don't deserve to die.
He said, reaching out his hand instinctually. Napalm looked down at Praxis's reached out hand like a lifeline, and with one word he took it. "Okay." Excuse me. Praxis then began leading him out, gesturing for him to crouch down a little as he walked out of the tent with him. They both kept low as they began walking for the main gate of the camp. It wasn't that well fortified since they only arrived a couple weeks prior, and as far as Praxis was aware, they weren't staying very long. At the gate was Belle. She was standing leaning against the wooden gate with her spear clutched in one hand. Praxis whispered to Napalm.
Quickly, hide over there behind that tent. I'll draw her away and run past once she's distracted.
Napalm gave a nod in response and scuttled behind the tent, watching as Praxis made his approach to the guarding Dragonborn.
Hey, Belle, how's it hanging?
Praxis spoke. Belle looked at him quizzically. "How's it hanging? What's up with you?" she said, immediately suspicious of his weird question. Praxis, immediately noticing his fuck-up, had to say something to try and draw her away from the gate.
Not much. What's up with you?
He said a little too angrily, which did have the effect of Belle turning away from the gate and walking towards Praxis. "Watch your tone, Praxis. You're still a private, and I'm a captain," she said a little too smugly for Praxis's liking. She did always have an air of superiority about her, especially when it came to rank, not seeing any other way to drag her attention away from the gate, though he had to push her buttons a little.
Mm-hmm. And you only got that rank because Jackdaw pulled a random name out of a hat. Just wait until the performance reviews, and you'll probably get the title removed.
Praxis said, leaning to one side and putting one hand on his hip, a smug look appearing on his face. Such a diva. His usual pose for when he wants to seem like a brat. This got her full attention. She dropped her spear to the ground and cracked her knuckles before beginning to walk over to him. All right, you little weasel. I'm gonna break your jaw now, she growled out at Praxis. With her attention thoroughly on himself, he chuckled and began to run away back toward to the barracks. She chased after him and was actively pissed off at him, and she fully planned on following through with her promise. When he rammed through the door, about 20 voices all groaned out in protest. Someone even began crying. Probably Lynx, who managed to just get to sleep, only to be violently woken up by the noise. Belle followed him in and was backing him into a corner. As far as Praxis could tell, nobody was planning on intervening, which only made him a slight bit nervous until he saw someone approaching. Kristoff.
Boy perfect. Boy perfect.
Boy perfect?
That is
Right,
literally what they call him.
right. Enough, you two. Please, let's not get chewed out by the general, because Praxis started some shit again. Kristoff said with finality, eyeing Praxis down. He knew Praxis always liked a bit of drama, especially at the start of operations, so he knew where to point the blame. Belle looked like she was gonna argue, but she just grunted and turned around, heading back out towards the gate. Praxis only hoped he had given Napalm enough time to get out before Belle could get back to her post. Kristoff walked over to Lynx, who was indeed crying over the lack of sleep and all the noise. Hey, Lynx. It's all okay. Sorry about the noise. I'll make sure it stays quiet from now on. He glares at Praxis as he says the word quiet, making sure he knows damn well what'll happen if he doesn't stop waking people up. With that, Praxis returns to bed, finally feeling tired after the night's activities. Kristoff, however, didn't, instead walking by the door and making sure nothing else happened that night and made sure everyone slept peacefully. Chapter 3. Sparks Fly. Praxis was awoken the next morning by something being thrown at his face. It was light, but still unpleasant to wake up to. Groaning, he reached up and grabbed the thing off his face. It was a letter. Morning, party animal. You got mail. Who'd want to mail you something? I have no idea. Praxis just glared at who spoke the words, and of course, it was none other than Boy Perfect. Kristoff, with Lynx trailing not too far behind him. The two of them were never apart. Well, Lynx, anyways, seemed to follow Kristoff around like a lost puppy, anyways. Finally turning his attention to the letter, it was plain. Just a white envelope with a closed with red wax. He ran his claw under the wax to break it open and opened it. The letter inside was short, but it was obvious who it was written by. Should I read this since it's his letter?
Yeah. Well, no, you would read it because it's written by
Okay, yeah, I figured. I
Napalm.
just didn't know if Praxis was reading it. Okay. Pete, thanks for last night. I can't, I really can't thank you enough for everything. I hope I can see you again soon. Signed, N. Praxis blushed slightly at the hopes of seeing Napalm again, and just as he was about to put the letter back in the envelope, a claw came quickly over and grabbed it out of his hand. What? Oh, fuck. Well, 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 what do we have here? Belle said teasingly, already planning her revenge for getting pissed off the night before. Hmm, Prax has a secret admirer. Anyone want to own up? She said out to the crowd after reading the letter and ignoring Praxis's protests. The sea of silence was surprisingly loud as Praxis buried his face in his hands. Belle turned back to Praxis. Well then, got a civvy fling, huh? Hope she's pretty, Prax, she said before flinging the letter back to him. He scrambled a little too fast to grab it and gently put it back in the envelope, keeping it safe and secure before putting it away under his bed under a small plank of wood to stop it from drifting away. He stretched and got up, beginning his day of rigorous training and patrols. It was normal, almost too normal for what happened yesterday. He did look over at the tent where they were keeping Napalm at one stage to see Jackdaw and Lynx. She looked terrified, and he'd never seen Jackdaw look that furious before. She even started to cry again, though this time out of fear more than annoyance and agony. Oh, poor Lynx. The guilt felt heavy in Praxis's chest, and he debated going over and letting Jackdaw know it was him on patrol. And so he started to walk over, and when he was about 20 feet away, an arm shot out in front of him, stopping him from moving any further. He looked up to see Kristoff blocking him. She's already decided to take the fall for you. Something about stopping her from shooting herself, Kristoff said. His tone actually sounded thankful.
Yeah. She was sleep deprived and messing with her pistol.
Praxis said, which elicited a long sigh from Kristoff. This clearly wasn't a new thing he'd experienced. Well, good job letting the prisoner slip out while you were fucking around with Belle, Kristoff said, crossing his arms and giving Praxis his signature disappointed look.
Yeah, sorry, quartermaster.
Praxis managed to sound mostly genuine. Kristoff stared him down a little until Praxis's gaze finally waved and Kristoff spoke again. Yeah, well, we aren't gonna get anything out of him anyways. Stubborn Nephthalites like that don't usually say anything, Kristoff said, finally uncrossing his arms and rubbing a hand over his eye, clearly drained from keeping watch on Praxis all night. Oh yeah, I heard what I heard about what you said to Belle. She earned that rank just how I earned mine. You should apologize before more fucking issues arise. Praxis giggled a little and said,
Oh, of course, boy perfect. I'll get right on that.
"Of course, of course." Sorry. Which made Kristoff give him a lopsided grin before shaking his head and walking off. Praxis's attention was already drifting back to Lynx anyways. She was still crying, but the general had walked off. She didn't look like she wanted particularly to talk with anyone right now, so Praxis decided to give her a little space. He instead walked over by the main gate where Belle was. She was standing in her usual pose, leaning against the wooden part of the gate with her spear firmly in her right hand. However, she seemed more tense than usual.
Hey, Belle. Nice to see you.
Praxis was trying to be as polite as possible to his captain. Belle let out a long groan and turned towards the private, who seemed to insist on hounding her. Ugh. What do you want, Prax? She said, staring him down, expecting a repeat of last night already.
I want to apologize. I just started something because I got bored of guard duty. Is there any way I can make it up to you?
He said, hoping she'd just let it drop. But unfortunately for Praxis, she did not. She chuckled a little, then brought her hand up and scratched the underside of her muzzle thoughtfully while looking up at the sky. Hmm, well, you could always take my post here, since you're so generous, she said, not really giving him the option to say no. Praxis simply grumbled a little before walking forward and reaching for Belle's spear. She let out a laugh and let him take it before starting to walk into the camp towards the barracks. She did, however, give him a pat on the back and said, Well, Praxis, I hope your distraction of me gave your pretty civilian girl plenty of time to sneak out of camp, she said with such confidence it made him tense up immediately, eliciting a laugh from Belle before she continued walking. After she was gone, he let the tension slowly seep away. She was so close to the truth and yet so far. Praxis wanted to keep it that way. For the next couple of hours, Praxis had nothing to do but kick the dirt at his feet and rock the spear back and forward. It almost took him a full minute before he saw the figure standing in front of him about 10 feet away, with his arms crossed, a smirk plastered across his red muzzle. He's back! Hey, pretty boy. Napalm, Napalm said without a single care for anyone around who might hear him. Praxis, however, stood stunned, his grip on the spear tightening so much that he thought he might accidentally snap it.
What what are you doing here?
He shouted in question. A deep rumble laugh came from Napalm, and once he stopped, he finally answered, Uh, um, for you, dum dum. I came to say thanks in person, and I wanted to see you again, so here I am. Praxis was starting to blush and get slightly flustered that this nephthalite was just standing in front of a plasmite base with zero worries. Instead of answering, he propped the spear against the gate and marched forward, grabbing Napalm's hand and leading him away into the woods so they could talk more privately. Ooh. Once finally deep enough, Praxis turned to him and shouted,
Are you stupid? You could have been captured again.
then let out a small growl audibly enough to drive his point in with his tail thumping down against the ground behind him angrily. However, this didn't really get the response he hoped for, as all Napalm did was scratch the back of his head with his free hand and let out a nervous chuckle. Yeah, well, sorry. I wanted to see you. This was the simplest way. Praxis just looked at him in disbelief for a few seconds before Napalm continued. And, you can let go of my hand now, if you want. Finally looking down, Praxis noticed he was still clutching onto Napalm's hand like it was the spear from earlier. His face immediately went red as he pulled away, getting super bashful and nervous.
Well, You wrote me a letter. Just write another one. My fellow soldiers just think it was from a civilian woman, so lean into that, I guess?
He was hoping that Napalm would agree. He really did want to see him more often. The feeling in his chest didn't seem to waver. It seemed to grow stronger, and all he wanted to do was find out what it was. Oh my god! Napalm nodded, crossing his arms restfully over his chest. Fully at arms seemed to be his resting position to which to Praxis was fine. There was more than one soldier back in the plasmite camp that always seems to be ready for action. Kristoff to name one. Sounds good, Praxi, Napalm said, making Praxis let out a soft humph noise at the nickname.
It's Praxis, actually.
Praxis said, looking around everywhere but Napalm. Okay, I like Praxi. I'm sticking with it. I'm sticking with it, he said confidently to Praxis, who just huffed in response.
Well, then I'm calling you Nape. Like the nape of the neck.
Yeah, yeah. You got this, sweetie. You got that. Napalm simply hummed thoughtfully in response before uncrossing his arms and walking over to Praxis. He reached forward around the back of Praxis's head and held the nape of Praxis's neck. Like this nape? He said cockily, making Praxis squirm. He immediately shoved Napalm's arm away and began walking away back to camp.
Write to me.
He said, pausing at the edge of the clearing they had found themselves in, looking up flustered and blushing at Napalm, who was smirking and looking real proud of himself, before finally walking away, not looking back at the red dragonborn who flustered him so much. As Praxis got back to camp, the gate was still left unguarded, and the spear was still leaning against it. He quickly picked it up and began guarding again, hoping no one noticed his disappearance. He was only gone for 10 minutes. Surely nobody noticed. Oh shit, who is it? Oh. So, how is Napalm? A voice from called out from behind the gate, which made Praxis freeze and let out an eek sound. Go on, eek for us.
E-
The voice revealed itself to be Lynx as she stumbled around and looked Praxis up and down as the genuine smile was on her muzzle. She leaned up against the side of the gate, trying to keep her balance.
How'd you.
Praxis began before being immediately cut off. I'm not stupid, Prax. You took my posts, and you never disappoint your father without reason. And you know you said his name. So, how was he? She seemed genuinely intrigued by Praxis's predicament.
He was fine. He just wanted to thank me. I won't see him again.
He tried to lie, but was called out as soon as he finished speaking. Bullshit. He left you a letter signed N. Like that didn't stand for napalm. She barked out, laughing out loud.
Ugh, fine. Yeah, I'm meeting him again. He's sweet.
He said, kicking one of his feet back and forth nervously. Lynx looked at him dumbfounded. She'd never seen Praxis this nervous before. Not over something like a guy. He made an impression on you, huh? Well, let's hope he's not a spy trying to seduce you for all of our top secret information, she said half jokingly, but the possibility of it was still there.
Well, if he is, he'll be very disappointed. My father doesn't tell me shit. Still just a private.
Praxis says as he finally stopped kicking his legs and looking down at the dirt below him. His heart felt a little heavy. His father never really gave him much responsibility. He always thought it was because of his lack of breath weapon. Well, if you ever sneak off to see him again, I'll cover for you. Just owe me one in the future, yeah? She said before starting to walk back into camp. I love Lynx. Like full pause.
She's
I
so
love her.
great.
Letting Praxis finish his shift. When the sun left the sky, his shift was finally over and he walked back to the barracks, passing Belle, who gave him a smug look, happy she got to rest for so long. As he stepped into the barracks, Lynx was trailing behind, standing up straight. She was very wobbly on her feet. Her tail was very large, and for most dragonborn, that usually meant walking hunched to balance out, but she stubbornly refused to do so. She was too damn short already to hunch down even further. She had barked out at Praxis when they were introduced 3 years ago, and she still refused to hunch over, which was most definitely causing damage to her spine. As soon as she spotted Kristoff, however, she walked past Praxis towards the other Dragonborn. Praxis just sighed and let out a little chuckle before walking over to his bunk and slipping into bed. He was exhausted. Standing around doing nothing had really taken it out of him this time. As he fell asleep, his dreams were restless, most of them about a red dragonborn sweeping him off his feet towards safety or away from the war, about a hand on the nape of his neck. But suddenly, he was awoken by the familiar feeling of something being thrown at his face. Prax, male, again, said the voice teasingly, clearly not Kristoff this time.
Uh, Lynx, what time is it?
Praxis groaned out sleepily, reaching up and grabbing not one, but two letters that had been thrown at his face, both plain white, but one with a red seal and the other blue. It's sunrise. Praxi, Lynx replied, increasingly teasingly. The nickname made Praxis bolt upright as soon as he felt the seal on the letter with the red was it had already been broken open. His expression was furious as he turned to Lynx, who couldn't contain her laughter anymore.
Who opened it?
He barked out, making a few people who were still sleeping jolt up and after figure out which realm they were in, give Praxis a death stare. Lynx having been thoroughly startled, takes a second of stumbling through her words before she finally managed to say, "Me, Prax, chill." He didn't stop staring at her. His eyes were furious, and he clearly wasn't happy. A voice called out as Kristoff approached the scene that was developing. "Hey, Praxis, don't you dare shout at my sister." Kristoff called out, getting angry at Praxis for the first time in a long while. This finally broke his confidence as he shrunk it on himself on the bed, feeling embarrassed and angry. Hey, it's okay. I was messing with him. It's my fault, Chris. Link said, trying to calm down Kristoff, which thankfully for Praxis it did. Sure, whatever. Don't shout at Lynx again, Praxis, or I'll order Bell to break your jaw. He said with a threatening edge before slowly backing away and going out of the barracks.
Okay. Don't go through my mail again, Lynx. Please.
Praxis said, finally unshrinking from his spot on the bed. Yeah, alright. Well, if you need me, I'll be out drinking coffee. I didn't sleep last night, she said, rubbing her eyes as Praxis finally noticed the bags under her eyes. He didn't stop her as she got up and walked off, instead focusing on the two letters in his lap. Firstly, the letter he reads is the red wax sealed letter, the seal already broken by Lynx. It read, "Dear Praxi, I'll be waiting by the spot we met yesterday at the same time. If you're serious about spending more time together, I look forward to your decision. Signed, N." The letter made Praxis blush. He wanted to leave now and go meet up with Napalm, but knew he had to wait. So instead, he opened the second envelope. Chapter 4, First Steps. The blue seals broke easily, and inside was a letter written on paper with a floral frame. The handwriting is much neater, and with much more flourishes than Napalm's handwriting. No, this letter was formal, and Praxis knew exactly who it was from before he even started to read it. What should I give her? Hello, my dearest Praxis. I hope your father is treating you well out there, and I hope you're also well. I hope soon you'll be able to write back to me, but for now, the thought is enough. Your brother Edward turned 4 today. Isn't that amazing? I hope you'll be able to meet him soon enough when you come back home. I better not make this letter too long unless it is confiscated. As my rules being what they are, I love you so much, and I miss you every day. Signed, Mom. The note immediately made Praxis tear up. It had been a few months since his last letter from his mother, and every time he cried. Others knew to leave him alone whenever he got the letters. He stood up and picked up the envelope from under the bed out as well, moving the plank off of it before making his way to the main ward den at the north side of the camp. Clutching the 3 envelopes, he saw his father fiddling around with 3 cards, placing them one place, then shaking his head and moving them, doing this over and over again until the plan seemed to fit in his head, which for right now wasn't happening. Finally, he noticed Praxis standing awkwardly by the tent's entrance.
Praxis, what is it?
He said calmly. Usually they only talked when something had happened or for orders. The father-son dynamic had been thoroughly broken 3 years ago.
I I received a letter from my mother, and I'd like to ink it to date it.
He said quietly, but just loud enough for Jackdaw to hear. Jackdaw let out a soft sigh before gesturing with his hand to an ink and pen.
Over there. Don't take too long.
He said before going back to examining his cards like they each held intricate answers to all his problems. Praxis walked over to the table holding the pen and ink and began to write the date on not just his mother's letter, but all of them. 26/07/1065 for the 2 received today, and 25/07/1065 for the one yesterday. With that, he waited with his arms crossed for them to dry. Neither Jackdaw nor him spoke to each other. They just existed whenever they were left alone, without duty or commands between them. Once the ink had dried enough, he snatched the envelopes and walked out. Jackdaw didn't even look up from his card. Walking back to the barracks, he stashed all 3 letters under the plank of wood, keeping them separate so he could keep track. He sat back down on the bed and took a deep breath. The day had barely started, and it already felt like it was too much. His orders for today were simply to train or keep watch. There was very little to do at the moment since everyone was waiting for Jackdaw to come up with a plan, or more importantly, actually tell everyone why they were even here. He finally sat up and made his way out to the barracks and toward the front gate where Belle was still on duty. She looked tired, clearly, still not having been relieved of duty since last night.
Hey, Belle. You look like shit.
He said teasingly, to which Belle responded with a grumble. Her eyes were closed as she leaned against the gate.
Go sleep. I'll take over again today.
Praxis offered, which finally got her attention. Are you trying to score some bonus points for the upcoming performance review or something? She said, tilting her head at him. He had completely forgotten that that was even happening, but it was a perfect excuse, so he nodded. Okay, fine. You can take this post permanently if you want it. It's the most boring post in the entire game, she said while walking away, not even letting him respond. She was making him take his post, which for Praxis was exactly what he wanted.
Thanks, Belle.
He called out as she disappeared into the camp, again not bothering to answer back to him. He picked up her spear which she had left and began waiting. He knew roughly the time he saw Napalm the day prior, but he was spacing out at the time. After an hour of waiting, Lynx seemed to stumble her way towards the gate from inside the camp. She looked really rough. Clearly the coffee hadn't helped as much as she wanted it to. Hey, Prax. How goes watching the trees? She said, making Praxis laugh a little before replying.
Super interesting. Wind's calm today.
So, gonna go visit your boyfriend today? She said bluntly in his response. Praxis immediately jumped up and turned around to look at her, blushing hard.
He's not my boyfriend.
He shouted a little loudly, which instead of startling her, just made her giggle. And I'm the leader of the plasmites. Teasing him further, which he was definitely not amused by.
Shut up. And yeah, I do plan on seeing him. You said you'd cover for me?
He asked, expecting to be told no or ridiculed, but instead she replied honestly. Of course, Prax. That's why I'm here. Go enjoy your totally not boyfriend, she said, taking the spear from him. He glared at her words for a second before going over and giving her a tight side hug and walking off towards the woods, which she gave a thumbs up to for encouragement. The trees swayed gently as Praxis approached the clearing, and as soon as he reached it, he spotted Napalm kneeling down and fiddling with the bracelet on his wrist.
Hey!
Praxis called out. He didn't expect Napalm to be here, especially since he thought he was early. He perked up as soon as he heard Praxis standing to his full height and shuffling nervously on his feet. Hey, Praxie, you're early. he said, calming down a little before walking over to him. He stopped a couple feet away. His posture wasn't as defensive as it was the last time they met. His arms were crossed instead of staying down at his side. You, have an issue? Come and meet me? I know it was short notice again. He scratched the back of his neck and seemed way more nervous than the previous confidence he displayed, and Praxis had no idea why.
I have a friend covering for me. They think I'm taking more duties because of an upcoming performance review. I'm kinda trailing behind.
Praxis explained, looking down at his feet and refusing to look back up again, expecting judgment. You're behind? Why? He asked him, his head cocked slightly to the side.
Well, I said the other day about my breath weapon when you were tied up. Yeah, I don't have one. Or at least I don't know how to use mine if I do.
Praxis said, not daring to look Napalm in the eye. His embarrassment was evident. He felt something touching his arm, which made him look up. Napalm was gently rubbing his arm, trying to make him feel more comfortable. Praxis gave him a gentle smile in return, the blush coming back in full force. Hey, I have an idea. Follow, Napalm said. The last words sounded more like an order, however, which made Praxis freeze a little. Napalm began walking away, and after a few steps of not hearing a second set of footsteps, he stopped and turned to look back at Praxis. I'm not one of... Oh,
I.
fuck.
I'm not one of your soldiers. Don't order me.
Praxis said, leaning to the side and putting his hand on his hip. This made Napalm stand straighter and smirk, crossing his arms and walking back over to Praxis, staring him down, but neither of them backed off. Praxis began to smirk, enjoying being the brat he was always destined to be. He is so me. Praxis is so me. What do you want from me?
I love being a brat so much.
Me
He's so
too.
me
He's
core.
so me, Cora. Napalm sighed, then reached out his hand. Well, then why don't you take my hand? I've shaken yours, and I'll leave out this time. At this, Praxis immediately broke. He blushed and straightened, clearly defeated and wanting to hold Napalm's hand. He reached over and took it, trying to look anywhere but at him. Napalm slowly backed up, pulling him with him. He was smiling and clearly enjoying making Praxis pull. He led him through the woods and towards a small stream that ran through a clearing. It looked cute, but made Praxis slightly confused. He wasn't sure why he was leading him here of all places. So, you're having with your breath weapon. Well, luck. You are speaking with quite possibly the best breath weapon user this side of the Darklands, he said, letting go and spreading his arms wide, showing off with a massive grin on his face. Praxis, however, wasn't as. He wrapped an arm around himself, grabbed his other arm.
Uh, that's great and all, but how's that supposed to help me?
Asking earnestly, Napalm walked over and grabbed him by both arms and made him look up. Simple. I've taught a few others how to use theirs. I'm sure I can teach you. Come on, show me your best attempt. Finally letting go and stepping back, giving Praxis the floor to perform. He took a deep inhale and breathed it out, psyching himself up for his attempt. He heaved, trying to use the muscles at the back of his throat to conjure his lightning breath. Instead, what came out was a sound similar to a cat throwing up a hairball. It made Napalm wince, and seeing his reaction, Praxis immediately shrunk in himself, embarrassed beyond belief. Hmm. You're using your throat muscles instead of your igniter organ, he said, moving closer. Praxis looked up at his head, looked up. Praxis looked up, his head tilting to the side, and asked.
Igniter organ? The hell is that?
Napalm started to try to explain, but was stumbling over his words. He couldn't find the right answer to the question that didn't just add more on. So instead, he moved closer and brought his hand up to the base of Praxis's. It's right here, Napalm said, gently pressing down on where the organ should be. The feeling tickled, but Praxis managed to keep his emotions in check. They were standing so close now that they could feel each other's body heat, and the feeling of Napalm's hand on his throat made Praxis feel lightheaded. You feel that? Napalm asked, and after managing to get past his lightheadedness, Praxis nodded. His hand came up to grip Napalm's wrist. Neither backed off. Try flexing. you should be able to click. With the instructions and the feeling of something touching it, he was able to actually flex the organ. It felt like grinding sandpaper together. He hadn't even accidentally done this before. It felt so foreign, but not entirely awful. Then he felt it. A spark. He saw a burst of blue light appear against Napalm's fist from his mouth. Napalm saw the lightning appear for a brief moment at the back of Praxis's throat. The excitement for Praxis was palpable. He jumped up a little excitedly, bumping into Napalm and making him stumble back a little. He grabbed onto Praxis, stabilized himself, making them both stop and look into each other's eyes. Moving on instinct, he grabbed Praxis's face, pulling him closer into a kiss. Pulling him closer into a kiss.
I gotta lock in. I'm like freaking out right now. Cause I've already read this and I'm still freaking out.
Yes, they're so cute. Okay. They both closed their eyes and pulled each other into an embrace. After what felt like minutes, but must have only been seconds, they pulled back. Praxis was stunned. He froze, suddenly feeling overwhelmed and not sure what to do. He pushed his head back against Napalm, who backed off. Praxis ran, not looking back as he made his way to camp. Why did you run? No! Okay. He ran out of breath as soon as he reached the gate, leaning against his knees, huffing. Oh, didn't go well? Lynx asked, who was still on guard in front of him.
No, it didn't.
He said, defeated, before sitting down on the ground. His body felt tired, and above all else, he just felt shame.
He kissed me and I ran away, Lynx.
Why would you run? His hands came up to cover his eyes. Lynx, however, didn't reply. Her focus was elsewhere. When he finally looked up at her, she had her spear at the ready as she stared at the tree line. Looking around, he saw him. Napalm was approaching, his hands up in clear surrender. Stay back, Nephthalite scum, barked Lynx, thrusting her spear forward a little as Napalm tried his best not to reach for his sword. Praxis shot up and stood between them, trying to stop the two from killing each other.
Lynx, this is Napalm. Chill, please.
He pleaded, but she was too angry to listen. She pushed forward, making Praxis have to dart backwards or get stabbed. Coming face to face with Napalm, Lynx finally noticed their height differences. She barely reached 5 feet while he was standing 6 foot 3 inches. Listen, I'm only here to apologize to Praxis. He tried to speak before getting cut off by a loud, snarling growl from Lynx. Praxis had come up behind her and put his hand on her shoulder, pulling her back slightly. A mix of that and Napalm's words made her finally back down, but she kept her eye firmly locked on the Nephthalite. Fine, make it quick, he said, giving in and backing away slightly. Praxis took his place in her stead, his arms crossed and leaning slightly. Praxis, I know that was fast. I'm sorry, it's just I've never met anyone who made me feel this strange before. I don't want to mess it up. I'm sorry. I hope you can forgive me. Napalm pleaded. One hand moved over his heart for emphasis, but the choke in his voice made it clear he was being sincere. Praxis understood. He felt the exact same way, and so without needing to hear it anymore, he stepped forward and caressed his face in his hands, pulling him down into a kiss. Napalm let a soft hum escape him as his lips met Praxis's. His hands came up to gently hold Praxis's waist, their eyes closed as the kiss deepened.
You see why I love them so much? You see why I love them so? They're so perfect. They're so perfect. I love them so much.
Okay. As they held each other, Lynx stood there awkward. She didn't really know where to put herself, so she just stayed still, then eventually spoke up. You two should maybe stop doing that in front of a plasma. Yeah. Just a thought. Which was met with no response from either of the men. She just huffed and went back to her post, waiting for them to finally stop. When they did, they looked each other in the eyes, holding their gaze for way longer than necessary. Praxis's thumb gently caressed over Napalm's muzzle.
Right to me?
He asked, to which Napalm replied, "Of course, Praxis," moving his right hand from his waist up to his nape, gently rubbing it as Praxis leaned in closer.
They're the perfect little itty bitties. I love them so much.
My heart. Also, can I take a quick pause to say that I just got a screenshot of a VR chat notification that somebody got on their phone, and it says, "Succubus ERP orgy for 30 minutes."
So we're cutting that shit out. I don't think no ERP orgy. We're reading the whole. We're reading the best yaoi ever. There will be no ERP orgy here.
The fact is, I got that notification. I got that text of that screenshot as soon as they started having that deep ass makeout. I'm like, wait a minute.
His audio is a
Okay.
little crunchy. Also, hey yo, gotta leave that in. Oh, I was literally gonna ask you, Jake. I was like, do you want us to leave in literally fucking everything? Because we were giggling earlier like school kids for 30 minutes.
At your
Yes.
store.
We have to leave in everything. Okay, so
Also,
this
hello,
even this right now.
Jacob. Is my... let me... hang on. I'm listening to my...
We just now hit chapter 5. We hit the second chapter.
My audio is crunchy. No, my audio is crunchy. I just listened to it.
It's been crunchy the entire time, I think.
Is it really?
I would guess so.
Has it been like this every stream? Jacob, I must know.
It is slightly crunchy, but it's like it's not horrible.
Do you hear it on? Do you hear it for you, or is it just a stream?
It's just a stream because I hear it fine.
Okay.
I'm hearing it fine right now, but the audio itself it's like kind of cutting in and out ish.
Okay.
Crush.
Yeah, I heard it. Yeah, I turned it up. Ah, man, that sucked. That's so dumb. Well, we must push forward.
Chapter 4 and 5 will be crunchy, and
if you don't like it, get sucked into the Jortex. I don't know what to tell you.
Jort Storm.
Jort Storm.
Push forward. Okay. Push forward. Right. Chapter 5.
Chapter 5. The Little Moments. A week had gone by. Praxis received a couple letters about how Napalm was doing and sweet little notes, usually delivered by the ever-sleepy Link. Finally, he received a letter asking to meet up at the clearing. Praxis. Finally, I'm relieved of duty. There's been a lot of new people at work. Keeping her eyes open. Let's meet again. Today. Signed, N. The note was quickly tucked under his bunk with the others. Thankfully, Lynx had stopped reading their mail after day 2. Apparently, it was far too sweet for her liking, so she's just been passing them on, and making sure nobody else reads them. So, what's nap this time? Lynx said, sitting on the edge of the opposing bunk, her head resting on her fist as she battled with sleep to stay awake.
He wants to meet! I'm so excited!
He's so cute! His excitement was palpable. He was squirming and couldn't sit still. Alright, Prax. Happy for you. Just, don't make out in front of me at camp again. That was the last thing I wanted to see. She asked. She always was awkward around any romantic interaction.
Understood, Lynx. I shall only make out in secret from now on.
He said jokingly, receiving a glare from Lynx as a prize for the lackluster joke. The door to the barracks swung open, and Jackdaw walked inside. The few people left inside immediately stood at attention, waiting for the command of their general. I'm so sorry. And that is all Jackdaw said. He walked right back out afterwards.
Attention.
Okay, I gotta lock in.
Everyone to the courtyard. We've got news.
Jackdaw commanded and walked out, and everyone followed. A nervous glance was exchanged between Praxis and Lynx. A meeting was never usually good news, especially if it was everyone. Once they reached the courtyard, there stood all 72 remaining members of the Jackdaw squad in position. The holes in formation seemed to grow each passing year, which always stung. Jackdaw stood by the main war tent, with Kristoff by his side, his arms crossed as he stood up straight and prepared to speak.
As you all know, this stay here was supposed to be a temporary thing. We're in the heart of the Nephilim land with barely any supplies. Well, it looks like we're going to be staying a while longer. A lot longer, in fact.
Jackdaw paused for the news to sink in. A lot of people groaned. More seemed pissed off, but one person here was beyond happy at the news. Praxis. This meant he could stay and interact with Napalm more. He didn't have to worry about leaving.
In about a week, I'll send a small team of you to gather supplies from a local village. If you spot Nephilites, you are not to engage. Remain passive. We don't want them thinking we're here in large numbers, so don't go running your mouths. All right, you're all dismissed back to work.
Jackdaw ended his speech. The crowd slowly began getting back to their duties. Praxis waited a few minutes for everything to settle before started walking to the gate to take over Belle's guard duties, and he was buzzing, practically skipping over at the thought of seeing his boyfriend again. Once he reached the gate, Belle instinctually passed over the spear and walked away, not even bothering with a hello or a thanks. She was clearly pissed off as she stomped away. The news of staying was not to her liking. He waited for a while until Lynx came by and took the spear off of him. He gave her a quick nod as thanks before nearly running off into the woods. All he could hear from behind him was Lynx calling out, "Enjoy nap time!" to Praxis's unamusement. As soon as the clearing came to him, he spotted Napalm leaning against a tree, waiting, and he wasted no time once they spotted each other. They ran over to each other and immediately wrapped their arms around each other as they kissed. Praxis's hands were clasped together around the back of Napalm, while he kept his hands on his waist. After what felt like an eternity, but not long enough, they finally broke the kiss, looking each other in the eyes for a few moments. Napalm's golden eyes seemed to somehow glow whenever he looked at Praxis, and he, in turn, would always get lost in them. "Hey, my Praxie, it's been too long." Napalm spoke finally, but neither stopped looking into each other's eyes. After a solid minute, Praxis's response came.
Sorry, I was lost. Oh, I've got news.
He said, pulling back and hopping up and down excitedly.
I just received word that we're probably gonna be here, gonna be staying for a while, so I'm gonna be around for a long time. Hope you like having me around.
Praxis said with a giggle. Napalm couldn't believe it. He picked Praxis up in a massive bear hug as the couple embraced and kissed once more.
Breathe, lock in.
They're my everything.
Sticking around, huh? That's more Lynxy. Sticking around, huh? I was just gonna steal you, but I guess I'll let you go. Napalm said teasingly, making Praxis laugh as they both refused to let go of each other.
I wouldn't mind.
Praxis responded, smirking. His eyes never left Napalm. He didn't know eyes could be so pretty. "If things get bad, I promise I will," he said genuinely to Praxis. He took a second to take in the promise before leaning in and kissing him one more time. Napalm put Praxis down finally after his arm started to get a little sore.
Oh, I have something to show you.
Praxis said, grabbing Napalm's hand and running immediately to the other clearing with the stream. Napalm followed more than happily, his bracelet jingling audibly with each step he took. Once they reached the stream, Praxis let go of Napalm's hand and turned around.
Watch.
Praxis commanded with confidence as he finally unleashed the breath weapon he had been practicing using. With a loud click, a stream of lightning breath was unleashed from his mouth. It went 5 feet and stung his throat and tongue, making him cough immediately after finishing. Napalm ran up and held him as he looked like he was going to pass out. Leaning back against Napalm's chest was comforting, and he was beyond proud he managed to show off for his boyfriend. You're amazing, Praxi, he said softly into his ear, making Praxis giggle. After a few seconds of being held, he finally stood up straight and cleared his throat from the weird feeling. Leaning to one side again and placing his hands on his hip, he turned and asked,
So, I was told that you were the best breath weapon user this side of the Sparklands. Want to back up that claim?
with the challenge set, Napalm had an extremely cocky grin on his face. He cracked his knuckles and moved into position. His mouth ignited in blue flames as it spewed forward from his mouth, erupting over 30 feet in front of him, and Praxis, and only smothered because he aimed specifically for the water. Praxis watched stunned with his mouth agape. He felt the heat hit him as the fire lingered on some of the grass. Napalm wasn't lying, and clearly he earned his name.
By Hestia, Nape, that was insane!
Praxis yelled gleefully, giving him a round of applause. Napalm simply bowed and then walked over, giving Praxis a kiss. The taste of char was pleasant on his tongue from the fire breath. When they pulled back, Praxis still looked in awe.
You must get a lot of praise for that. Holy.
He said, gently caressing some of the rougher scales on Napalm's arm. Instead of the reaction he expected, Napalm looked almost sad. He just shrugged and hoped Praxis wouldn't push, but of course, that wasn't going to happen.
You don't?
He asked, tilting his head with a concerned look on his face. I'm not golden. Don't usually get a lot of praise, he said sadly, his eyes welling up slightly, but he quickly rubbed them, forcing the tears away.
That can't be the only reason. That was amazing.
He said, trying to cheer him up, but slightly, to no avail. I was supposed to be born a golden. I wasn't. I'm buried under a mountain of lost expectations, he said somberly, a single tear running down his cheek. Before he could reach up and wipe it away, Praxis beat him to it, rubbing it away with a gentle smile.
I don't care if you're golden. I like your eyes. That's more unique than any person I've ever met. And that's just the start of your qualities.
My lord. His words were genuine, which stung ever more for Napalm as he finally let the tears flow. He wrapped his arms around Praxis.
You're beautiful.
Give me a second. Okay, he said, gently caressing more of Napalm's jagged and rough scales, each one unique and more important to Praxis than whatever color he was. They stayed there together for what felt like hours, neither of them wanting to let go of each other, but as the sun set, they knew what they had to do. Lynx could only cover for so long, and they knew she'd only be able to come up with so many lies about why Praxis was gone. Finally backing up, they looked into each other's eyes. Praxis had started crying alongside him at some stage, and he wasn't sure when.
Fuck. Okay. Listen, I'm going into the town next week for a supply run. If you could just appear, I'd appreciate it.
Praxis asked, rubbing his own eyes clear of tears. Yeah, yeah, I could do that. I'll do anything for you, Napalm said, looking deep into Praxis's dark green eyes, after getting lost in each other's eyes for longer than either planned. Finally parting, their hands stayed holding as they slowly walked away until their fingers were all that touched. Then, when the contact was lost, they both cried, not able to stand being without the other, but they both knew they couldn't stay, so they parted, at least for now, and they'd only need to wait a week. They'd never have to wait longer, both of them thought thankfully. A week went fast, and as soon as the option to volunteer to go into town came, Praxis was the first in line to apply. Lynx begrudgingly agreed to come along since she wanted to grab some coffee anyways, since the camp was running so low. But nobody would but her would buy it since it was usually a Nephthalite delicacy. The others were a couple other blue and a brass dragonborn. Then the day came and the group went into town. keeping far enough apart that they'd not attract too much attention to themselves. With Lynx and Praxis together, they walked towards their shops with their specific lists, mainly getting the bulk of the food rations which were running direly low at this stage. The town was mostly run with red and green dragonborn, who were less than keen to sell to Praxis and Lynx, especially the coffee sellers, who seemed suspicious about her trying to buy from them. She wasn't getting anywhere and looked like she was a moment away from being told to leave when suddenly a familiar face approached them. I'll take two of whatever she wants, Napalm commanded, his lieutenant persona firmly in place. The dragonborn behind the counter had no more resignations and immediately gave Lynx her portions of coffee beans she asked for. Thanks, Nap Nap, she said, looking up at him and clutching her coffee, like without it she'd die, which is truthfully how she felt in that moment. Anytime. Least I can do for accidentally scaring you a few weeks back. So where's Prexy? He asked, immediately getting a giggle from Lynx. He's haggling with a poor dragonborn woman outside, trying his best to get him some food, but failing in his usual style. Wanna help him out, big man? He nodded eagerly before turning around and immediately heading out to the market. Spotting him almost immediately, he came up behind him and hugged him. It made him pause midway through his sentence with the woman at the stall. It was clear that Napalm could care less about who saw him with Praxis.
Hey! Oh, it's you!
Praxis said, nearly shouting, turning around to hug his boyfriend, which Napalm gladly accepted. I missed you. I got you something. Here, Napalm said, offering Praxis a few pieces of chocolate. Praxis looked down at the strange food. He'd never encountered it before and was quite eager to try it. As soon as he took a bite, he let out a soft sigh. It tasted amazing, but he was sure that's just because Napalm had given it to him.
This is amazing. What is it?
He asked, looking up at Napalm as he took another bite. It's chocolate. It's a Nephilim thing. Praxis simply nodded. It stuck a little to his teeth, but the sweetness was amazing. But as he was getting comfortable, the crowd began to murmur and part all to the edges. Napalm suddenly got on edge as he looked over to where the commotion was coming from, and as soon as he spotted it, he froze. Praxis's gaze followed him, and what he saw was horrifying. A golden dragonborn, flanked by a red and green dragonborn, were walking through the center of town, covered in blood and gore. The gold was carrying a body, red, clearly a fellow soldier who was injured. As they got near Napalm and Praxis, Napalm suddenly walked in front of Praxis and shot an arm out onto Praxis' chest. A jolt of fear shot through Praxis as he stared at the gold walking through. The gold dragonborn's eyes shot over at the sudden movement of Napalm's arm. He looked confused, like seeing these two together was a little strange for him. As soon as he passed, Napalm stopped staring and turned to make sure Praxis was okay. He, like the mere presence of that one dragonborn, could somehow hurt him.
Who was that?
Asked Praxis, confused at his boyfriend's sudden awareness. Oh my god! That's my twin! That was Draco, the Nephilites' literal gold. He said calmly, but it was clear that whoever that was, he was dangerous. Or have to fight him. He's run. You see like that. His eyes were already welling with
Oh, we're losing you. Come back.
losing me.
Yeah. We lost
Oh,
you at the start of the start of the if you ever have to fight him quote.
oh, okay, I got you. If you ever have to fight him, Praxi, please, run. Couldn't lose you like that. His eyes were already welling with tears as he gripped onto Praxis.
Hey, I'm okay. I promise. All right?
He said, gently rubbing a particularly jagged scale on Napalm's forearm that he had decreed his favorite. Satisfied, Napalm nodded and pulled Praxis into a hug, which lasted for only a few seconds. I've got to run, Praxi. I've got orders I need to carry out. All right, okay? He asked for permission, but already knew the answer as Praxis nodded, giving him a quick kiss before running back off. off back to wherever his camp was. The rest of the trip wasn't eventful. Lynx finally came out of the shop confused as to why there were drops of blood running down the street, but Praxis never told her. Finally making it back to camp, regrouping with the other teams, they had enough supplies to last them a couple more months. They thought they wouldn't be here for any longer than that. Praxis received several letters from Napalm over the course of the next few days, each one stored and dated neatly under his bunk. It had been a month by now since they got here, and tomorrow was going to be a big day. Tomorrow was the performance review. Waking up to the sounds of everyone else rushing and getting ready, Praxis groaned, covering his eyes with his hands and letting out a slightly overly dramatic yawn. Lynx approached and pushed him a little to get him to stir. Come on, Prax. Performance review day. Don't want to be late. He groaned a little more at her pushing, but didn't put up much of a fight as he sat up, looking at her after finally removing his hands and letting the light hit his face.
Let's hope I don't suck as much as I did the last review.
He half
Oh,
joked, standing and What?
no, you're good. Keep going.
Oh, okay. He what? Jackdaw shouted at the wow, okay.
Yeah.
He what? Jackdaw shouted out at Commander Carlyle inside the war tent, his hands gripping the table nearly splintering as he growled out in anger.
Jackdaw, calm down. This is good news. Your son has improved leaps and bounds, and you should be proud.
The statement made Jackdaw pull back and run a hand through his hair, gripping it at the base to try and ground himself, but he couldn't control his anger.
How? How did this happen?
He asked seemingly to the gods, to which they had no answers. Carlyle was more than a little confused at his anger.
Jack, take a moment and breathe. Get yourself together, General,
he commanded, in which Jackdaw was more than happy to comply, marching out of the tent and exiting the gate. Belle was still on duty at the gate as Jackdaw passed her. She went to say something, but the glare he gave her made her think better of it. He walked into the woods to try and clear his extremely clouded mind. He came across a small clearing. He slumped against a tree and clutched his horns in his hands, pulling them like he could pull them off.
Fuck!
He screamed at the top of his lungs, scaring a few birds up above. But another sight caught his attention. Another sound caught his attention. Footsteps. He quickly jumped up and hid behind a tree, away from the sound and kept an eye on its direction. Nobody should be out here, he thought. Not this close to camp. Hey, Praxi, how was the review? No, that's too personal. Hey, handsome, how was the review? Ugh, no, far too weird. Oh no, Napalm said while walking through the clearing, scribbling down a letter, using his forearm as a stabilizer for the paper. Jackdaw watched the red dragonborn pause in the clearing and pace, going over a few more ideas on what to say or how to say it. He must not have heard Jackdaw yell, or at least must have been too spaced out to even acknowledge it. Seeing this clear opening and not wanting to have a red too close to camp, Jackdaw pounced once Napalm wasn't looking, tackling him to the ground and quickly unsheathing his dagger to press against his neck.
Who are you, and why are you near my camp?
Jackdaw commanded, nicking the flesh between Napalm's scales as his knees dug into his back, preventing him from trying to move.
Oh, fuck. My name's Napalm. I'm here for Praxis,
he said, grunting from the pain. Hearing that this man was here for his son inspired zero calm from Jackdaw.
You're what? How'd you know my son's name?
He barked, the dagger digging quite severely past Napalm's scales and into his throat.
I'm his boyfriend,
he shouted as the dagger was dangerously close to severing an artery. But thankfully for Napalm, Jackdaw retracted the dagger and looked down at him confused, panting slightly from the effort of keeping the massive dragonborn trapped beneath him.
What?
He asked, deeply confused. Using this confusion, Napalm managed to quickly shove Jackdaw off of him. They stumbled back from each other as Jackdaw quickly reached and pulled out his flintlock pistol and aimed it at Napalm, as he quickly raised his hands in surrender.
Explain now, or I'm gonna kill you for uttering my son's name,
he commanded, his tone stern as his finger was firmly on the trigger.
He he helped me escape a little while ago, and we kept on meeting. I I really like him.
Napalm pleaded with him. Jackdaw could see his sincerity and looked at the letter that he had dropped on the ground, as well as a small package.
What's in the package?
He asked skeptically, not sure what to do anymore.
It's chocolate. Praxis seemed to like it, so I wanted to give him more.
He said, Jackdaw rubbing the back. He said, wow. He said, rubbing the back of his neck nervously while blushing slightly. Needing to verify his claims, Jackdaw moved closer and picked up the package with his free hand, the pistol sights never leaving Napalm's chest. Slowly unwrapping it, he was telling the truth. It was indeed chocolate. Needing to do one final thing to prove he was genuine, he quickly wrapped it back up and threw it over to Napalm.
Eat it. Eat some to prove it's not poisoned,
he said. His hands started to shake on the pistol, waiting to prove himself. Napalm picked up the chocolate and ate a couple of pieces. Since it had no effect on him after a few seconds, Jackdaw slowly started to lower his gun.
Well, that proves you're not poisoning my son at least,
he said jokingly, trying to ease the horrible tension that was there. Napalm took the opportunity to hold his hand over his throat to stop the bleeding that was gently seeping down his scales.
Are you a lieutenant?
Jackdaw asked, a sudden opportunity awakening in his mind.
Yeah, why?
He replied, rubbing his neck. The damage was superficial for the most part, but still painful.
Are you stationed at Coven Ridge?
He asked, ignoring Napalm's question. Taken slightly aback at that a plasmite general would know of Coven Ridge, he took a second before nodding.
Are you serious about my son?
He asked finally. The gun duel aimed down now as the tension was beginning to seep away, as a new tension grew in its place.
I am.
More than anything, Napalm said with all his heart. He loved Praxis, though he wasn't sure how to say it quite yet.
Good. How about we make a deal?
Asked Jackdaw, putting his flintlock away in his holster before walking over to Napalm.
What kind of deal?
He asked skeptically.
One where you get to see Praxis a lot more often. I get information on Coven Ridge,
he said, reaching out a hand. Napalm looked down at it as thoughts swam through his head. Why would a plasmite general want information on Coven Ridge? But that didn't matter to him. Not at all. The thoughts of seeing Praxis more often, not having to wait a week in between seeing him, was too much of a benefit. Deal, Napalm said without hesitation, and shook Jackdaw's hand. As Jackdaw reached camp, Commander Carlyle was finishing up his speech and awarding everyone their medals. Nobody went home, even though Praxis was supposed to. His newfound use of his breath weapon and his constant volunteering to man the front gate gave him just enough credit to not be dishonorably discharged. Jackdaw wanted him to go home so badly, but with Napalm and the new access to Coven Ridge, he couldn't. He had to see it through. He had the lives of Jackdaw Squad, Percy Squad, and Lincoln Squad. Each life weighed on his soul. It would be his responsibility to make sure they didn't die. He took the letter that Napalm wrote and the chocolate and brought it to the barracks, putting it on Praxis's bunk for him to find when he came back to bed. He looked over at the bed for a second, his heart pounding with guilt at making the deal. But he knew that it had to happen. Coven Ridge was the end goal, and Coven Ridge had to fall. Chapter 6. The Deal. After the ceremony, Praxis made his way back to his bunk. Spotting the letter and chocolate, his heart immediately sank. He turned to Lynx, who was walking beside him.
You leave that for me?
He asked, and to his horror, she shook her head no. He quickly scrambled to the letter and broke the red seal. It was a simple letter. Hey, Apraxi. I'm glad your performance review went well. I look forward to seeing you again. Love, N. He felt difficult emotions. Confusion was the main one. How did Napalm know about his performance review? He started to panic before a voice called out,
Praxis! Lynx! Jackdaw wants you both in the war tent.
Kristoff commanded. Since this whole Napalm thing, Lynx had actually started to spend less and less time with her brother. She'd actually started to walk with a hunch and hadn't been complaining about her balance as much. Lynx rose first and nodded her head in the direction of the door for Praxis to follow. Both of them walked in silence, Praxis's heart pounding about what this might be about. He hadn't been called up like this in a while. Once they reached the war tent inside with Jackdaw alone. He was still fiddling with the playing
What the fuck?
cards, but he seemed to have more purpose now, as he placed them in specific spots and didn't seem to move them around very much after that. He was sure, or at least surer, about something.
Ah, good. You're both here, he said with resolve. I'm changing your posts. Both of you are on gate duty permanently from now on. We're going to be here for a while longer, so we need more people at the gate.
When he finished, Lynx groaned while Praxis seemed elated. This was perfect because he could run off to see Napalm way more frequently.
Lynx, you're dismissed. Praxis, I need to speak with you about something.
Jackdaw commanded. Lynx shot Praxis a worried look before saluting Jackdaw and leaving. When it was just the two of them, the air was thick with awkward tension. Jackdaw didn't quite know how to word what he was about to say.
So, son, I know about your friend.
He said with emphasis to make sure exactly which friend Jackdaw was talking about.
You you know about napalm?
Praxis said, shaking. He was terrified about what had happened to Napalm, and the state of Jackdaw left a lot of questions. His knees were scraped, and his pistol in his holster was still cocked.
Yeah, I know about napalm. I'm willing to let this continue. Just be careful, okay? Please, for me.
He asked, not wanting to force them apart, and knowing the terms of the deal he made, he couldn't. Coven Ridge was too worthwhile, even if he had to let his son see someone he really didn't want him to. Even if he had to keep his son around here in the midst of a soon-to-be battlefield. Praxis took a second to take his dad's words in before replying. He was actually super happy about this outcome. He'd be able to see his boyfriend more often.
Of course, Dad. Can I go see him now?
He asked in the hope that he might be at the clearing this late was evident in his voice. Jackdaw took a moment, then nodded as Praxis immediately ran off out of camp and towards the clearing. He spotted Napalm immediately. He hadn't left yet. He was scratching his neck, and as Praxis approached, he saw the blood dripping slowly down his scales. The red made his scales shinier. He froze in horror for a moment before running over to him.
Napalm!
He called out, immediately rushing to examine the wound.
Praxi, what are you doing here?
He asked roughly as the blood continued to flow.
I'm here to see you. Now tilt your head back. It's a good thing I carry medical stuff with me.
He said, already reaching down to grab bandages and alcohol from a small pouch on his leg.
No, I'm fine. Don't worry.
Napalm pleaded. He said bluntly. Oh, shit. Napalm pleaded. He never wanted him to see him like this.
No, don't be stubborn now. Tilt or I'll slap you.
Praxis said bluntly, immediately making Napalm bashful. He slowly tilted his head, which parted the scales at his throat, letting Praxis quickly disinfect it with alcohol. Napalm winced in pain as the liquid burned his throat. He gripped onto Praxis's arm a little as the pain was searing his throat.
Ow.
Oh,
Ow.
he said in a monotone voice, but his grip tightening betrayed how much it hurt.
Big baby. Hold still.
Praxis said, laughing a little as he bandaged the wound as much as he could. I'm smiling so much, I can't help it. There. Oh, shit.
There. All set. Shouldn't bleed out anymore.
Praxis said after finishing tying the bandage. He quickly gave him a gently reassuring squeeze on the forearm, rubbing his favorite scale on Napalm's arm a few times more to reassure himself more so than Napalm.
What happened between you and my dad?
Praxis asked concern. He was a little calmer now that he knew Napalm was alive and now not bleeding out.
We had a disagreement. He let me see you, though, so I'm happy.
He said, checking Praxis's bandaging. It was secure and comfortable.
Well, just don't go dying, okay? I don't know what I'd do if I lost you. I know, I'm trying to keep it together too. I'm trying to lock in.
Fan my face, he said softly to Napalm, his voice cracking slightly at the thought. You won't lose me, I promise. I don't plan on dying anytime soon, he said jokingly, though both believed it.
I should be getting back. Right to me?
Praxis asked, already knowing the answer. Of course, Praxi, Napalm replied, not letting go of him just yet. He pulled him into a kiss. Both of them closed their eyes and savored the moment. After making it back to camp, Praxis went to sleep. His mind was filled with nothing but Napalm. He couldn't wait until he saw him again. The next 4 months were filled with little moments of them meeting. Picnics, stargazing, while Praxis was supposed to be on night duty, cloud watching, training together, and whatever else came to mind, or what they bought for each other, which was usually chocolate in Napalm's case. Back at camp, things started to change. Their armaments were boosted. Instead of just swords and a couple rifles, they switched to full flintlock rifles for everyone. Instead of guarding the gate with spears, it was also rifles and pistols. The walls, instead of being filled with holes, were fully replaced with reinforced wooden walls, and the tents replaced with wooden buildings and proper barracks. Praxis was a little late to sneaking out this one particular day, so the sky was orange as the evening sun was setting. Praxis jogged to the clearing and spotted Napalm immediately.
Hey, sorry I'm late. Training was killer. They've been ramping up the drills recently.
Praxis said, slightly out of breath. Napalm stood from his kneeling position and rubbed the nape of his neck. Yeah, that's okay. I understand. Probably because of Coven Ridge, right? He asked, yawning. He looked tired, like he'd been up since early that day.
Coven Ridge? What's that?
Has it been Coven this whole time?
Yes, it's Coven Ridge.
God, and you didn't fucking correct me?
Well, you said it right every time. What are you talking about?
I'm saying Coven. You said Coven.
Oh, it's Coven Ridge.
It's shit. Okay, now I know. He said, tilting his head at Napalm. He'd never heard anyone say Coven Ridge. The way Napalm said it, like it was obvious, was very confusing. Yeah, you know, the deal I made with your dad. I see you more. I give him information on Coven Ridge. Napalm explained. It suddenly clicked in Praxis's mind why his dad was so okay with him seeing a Nephthalite.
You. What? When were you going to tell me this?
He shouted at Napalm, his anger rising at the deal. Napalm looked taken aback and stammered through his words. How is this a big deal? He asked, trying to stop the situation from getting worse.
What's the big deal? The big deal is the fact that my dad is apparently using me as a transaction tool.
He shouted. His hands came up to grip onto his horns as his tears began to flow. Suddenly understanding it, and also that he was never even told about Coven Ridge, made Napalm instantly feel bad. Hey, it's okay, Napalm said, a little panicked, trying to somehow find a way to comfort his boyfriend.
No, it's not okay.
Stop! I can't do this. I can do this. Praxis said with tears streaming down his face as Napalm quickly came over and pulled him into a hug. Praxis's hands left his horns as soon as his arms wrapped around Napalm. His tears were a never-ending stream as Napalm tried his best to make him feel better.
What?
Wait, what?
I think you're at the,
Oh,
I think you're at the
fuck.
wrong section.
It's fine. Okay. Praxis said through sobs, hugging. Fuck. Praxis said through sobs, hugging into Napalm, seeing comfort that Napalm was eager to give. He gently stroked his back, shushing him, trying to find the right words to explain the deal that made sense. I don't know why your dad wants information about Coven Ridge, but I'm sure he'd never want to hurt you. He tried to explain, but Praxis seemingly wasn't too happy with that answer. He pushed back suddenly on Napalm and took a few steps back.
That's what you think I'm angry about?
He said, stomping the ground with his foot.
I'm angry because my dad used me and you never told me.
he shouted. Napalm stood frozen. He wasn't sure how to fix this, what words to say, and how to calm Praxis down. I didn't know. You didn't know. Hello? What are we doing here, Napalm? I'm so sorry. I had to interrupt for this. You don't know what to say? Listen, I didn't know that you didn't know. I thought he told you. That's it. Whatever. He started to stammer, his hands slightly raised as he tried to somehow piece words together in front of him.
Don't even try.
Praxis shouted out before turning and walking away towards camp. Napalm took a few seconds to register what was happening before running to catch up. Wait! He called out to Praxis, but he didn't react. He just let out a flinch as he kept on walking. Come on, please, let me explain. I, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean. He stammered, clutching his head as nothing he did seemed to stop Praxis from walking away. They approached the camp. They were in clear view of the gate and standing guard with her flintlock rifle was Lynx. She couldn't stop Praxis as he barged past her into the camp, but she did rush out to stop Napalm from doing the same. Hey, Nap Nap. Hey, Nap Nap. Don't. Leave him alone, she said, her hand reaching up to brace Napalm's chest to stop him from following. But I need to explain, he said, shouting after Praxis, who disappeared into the camp. Yeah, and I'm sure he'll let you, but keep it down. Only Praxis, me, and Jackdaw know about you. Don't alert the whole camp, she barked out, trying to get him to back away. No, I can't leave him like this, he pleaded, finally stopping trying to get past Lynx. Give him time to cool off. I don't know what happened, but just give him time, she said calmly. She knew exactly how Praxis was. He never dealt with emotional conflict very well and always blew up and needed time. Napalm was very much the opposite. Deal with it now and don't let it fester. What if he doesn't let me explain? He quietly asked Lynx, his eyes never leaving the spot where he last saw Praxis. Then he doesn't. Look, I know you love him, but just give him time. She said the word love, making Napalm flinched. He didn't know he was that obvious. I hope he does, Napalm said as a prayer more than anything. Inside the camp, Praxis went towards the new war room, pushing the doors open wide. Inside were Jackdaw and Kristoff hovering over the map. The cards were still in the same place they had been for over a month now. New pieces were on the board, however, specifically gold coins used to indicate key targets. One was a stack of 5 golden coins. Whatever that was clearly important.
You used me as currency?
Praxis barked at his father, growling slightly as he stared angrily at his father. Kristoff went to respond. He looked just as pissed as Praxis due to his barging in. Praxis, get! He said before getting cut off by Jackdaw, raising his arm. Kristoff, leave us, he said, staring back at Praxis. Kristoff looked between them for a couple seconds, sensing the rising tension. He sighed before walking out, shutting the door behind him.
You used me as currency. Explain.
Praxis demanded, his death stare unwavering.
I didn't use you as currency, Praxis. Don't be overdramatic,
Jackdaw replied with little conviction, but still trying to downplay his son's emotions.
You can't be fucking serious,
he shouted, clenching his fists as he approached the table in front of his father, slamming down a hand which knocked a few pieces out of position.
Praxis, this is a war. You're not the only piece,
he shouted in return, and immediately started to fix the pieces that were knocked over.
What are we even fighting if it's so important? You've not said anything.
He raised his voice again. His emotions were not calmed even slightly. Jackdaw seemed frustrated. He looked on the verge of saying something, but kept on thinking better.
Praxis, it's not that simple.
Not that simple. Why me? Why did you have to use me to get information about this Coven Ridge? Why couldn't you just let me be happy?
Praxis asked, his anger slowly being replaced by pure sadness and defeat.
Because you're not the only person I need to worry about. Don't be a child, Praxis. You know better than that.
He was half growling towards his son. He hoped that his son would just back down, that he wouldn't push it any further, but he wasn't so lucky.
How how important is this Coven Ridge?
Praxis asked, staring down at his feet.
Very. Over 200 lives and 3 squads rely on this going well.
He said somberly. The weight on his shoulders could almost be felt. He was desperate for any information on Coven Ridge, and having a direct line straight to the heart was worth more than anything.
Loud incorrect buzzer. Uh, what what did Napalm get in return for his information?
Praxis asked, hoping the answer wouldn't be terrible.
Nothing really. He wanted to see you more. Basically what you wanted.
Jackdaw explained, leaning forward and resting his hands on the table as he took one last look over the table, making sure things were back in their place.
He just wanted to see me? Nothing else?
He asked almost hopefully. He wasn't aware he meant so much.
Yeah. Not sure why he likes you so much, but it has been beneficial.
Jackdaw responded, his voice tapering out as he finished talking.
Beneficial. Of course.
Praxis said as his voice broke. He turned around and stomped out of the war room, his mind racing with a million thoughts, but one thing was louder than anything else. Napalm. His pleading and the fact that he just wanted to see him made him want to go back out and let him explain himself. As he approached the gate, he leaned against it. Napalm wasn't there, but a very on edge Lynx was. So, you okay, Prax? She asked hesitantly. Praxis let out a long breath to try and clear his head, to very little success.
No, not really.
He said, looking up at the sky, which was now getting dark. The stars held no answer that Praxis wanted. Need me to go beat up Napalm? He doesn't get to harm you, she said, gritting her teeth in newfound anger. Praxis chuckled a little, then answered her.
No. He didn't do anything wrong. Forgot to tell me something he should have a while ago.
He said. Her anger had made him feel calmer somehow, and as soon as she heard him laugh, she dropped the fake anger act. Good. You were acting like he cheated on you or something, she said jokingly, trying to cheer him up.
No, he wouldn't. He's ace, and I hope he'd have the courtesy to break up with me before seeking someone else.
He said fondly. He really did think a lot of Napalm, and he really wanted to see him again. Well, hey. Excuse me. Excuse me.
She does say excuse me twice, in fact.
Okay. Well, hey. Nice to meet another apes person. Though I'm guessing he's not arrow like me, she said sarcastically.
Well, obviously, Lynx.
He responded, laughing. His mind was finally clear, and the only thing he wanted to do was go and speak with him.
Think he'll be at the clearing?
He asked Lynx. Would your emotional and golden retriever boyfriend wait in the one location he knows you'd go to find him? I cannot tell, she said, scratching her chin. The sarcasm was practically dripping off of her. He rolled his eyes before running off towards the clearing, and just as Lynx predicted, he was sitting down in the middle of the clearing, writing. He was sounding out each word as he wrote, so Praxis just stood there for a second, letting him continue. You crying? No, okay, I don't think so. Praxie, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Please come talk to me soon. He then proceeds to read it over, then crumple it, starting again on another piece of paper just to write basically the same words again. He groaned after the next attempt, throwing the crumpled up paper ball at Praxis's feet, which suddenly makes him finally notice his presence. Praxis was standing in his usual pose, leaning to the side with a hand on his hip. Napalm shoots up as soon as he notices and quickly brushes himself off, already acting bashfully before either of them say anything.
You made a deal to see me?
He asks. He already knows the answer, but he needed to hear it from him when the emotions were clear. When emotions were clear. Yeah, I just wanted to be able to see you more. If you want to see me again, that is, he said, shuffling on his feet, his hand nervously rubbing the back of his neck a little more vigorously than usual. Praxis let out a long sigh.
I forgive you, and I'm sorry as well for blowing up. I should have given you time to explain.
Praxis replied. He was not moving any closer, however, so Napalm took the first step. He walked closer and then reached out his hand. I'm so happy you forgive me. I should have told you ages ago. Will you take my hand? He asked Praxis, making him blush instantly. Napalm learned one major thing about Praxis recently. His one weakness was getting his hand held. Praxis took Napalm's hand as he quickly pulled him closer, embracing him in a hug. Then after a few seconds, Praxis leaned in too.
Guess my dad really used us both. You could have been killed, Napalm.
He said softly, his head resting on Napalm's chest. I get to see you. That outweighs anything. I'd break mountains if it meant I could get to spend another minute with you. I'm going to kill myself. Chapter 7 Golden Days. A few more months had passed since then. Praxis and Napalm saw each other more and more. It was practically every day at some stages. It came to December. Praxis's and the entire squad's birthday was coming up. With Praxis turning 17, it meant the squad was also turning 17. As he began to stir in his bunk, he suddenly felt something push him as he tumbled off the bed and onto the hard wooden floor. He groaned from the pain as a myriad of laughter erupted from around him as people gathered around. Happy birthday, Prax! Yelled most of the voices. One person came up to his half asleep self's side. Morning, Prax. Get up off the floor, said Belle, smirking as she reached her hand out to grab him. He groaned and reached his hand up, getting quickly pulled up to his feet as he rubbed his eyes with his other hand.
Ugh. Thanks, guys. And happy birthday to the squad!
He shouted out as everyone began to cheer. Belle gave him a pat on the back as people began filtering out. This happened every year for the past 4. The last birthday of the year, December 11th. Praxis let everyone filter out as he caught his bearings. The only person to really stick around was Lynx, who was holding an envelope and a wrapped package. Guess who these are from? You get 3 goes, she said, smiling.
Let me guess. A tall, dashingly handsome dragonborn with a knack for great timings?
No, it was your mother, he said jokingly, but was still eager to go see his boyfriend. That would be correct. And here's your prize, she said, handing Praxis the letter and packaging. It was like always, chocolate. The letter was sweet and simple. Hello, Praxie. I've missed you. It's been a whole 2 days. Come to the clearing. Signed, N. He was always so sweet, though he wasn't always one for a lot of words.
Ah, I love him.
Praxis just said, starting rereading the words over and over. Uh-huh, really? I couldn't tell, Lynx said, her voice dripping with the most sarcasm it ever had, which earned a look of judgment from Praxis.
Shut up. I'm gonna go see him.
He had already beginning to walk out of the barracks before Lynx swished her tail in front of him. Not so fast, lover boy. You gotta actually interact with the squad, she said with a warning tone. All you've done is go see him. Actually interact with your squad. We're your family as well, and we want to see you on your birthday, she said, following up. Praxis felt a pang of guilt as he hadn't really about any of the squad.
Okay, yeah, I know. I'll head out and spend some time with them.
He said, scratching the back of his head nervously.
I know I haven't really. I've just been busy.
Yeah, I'm aware, Prax. Your rifle training has basically been completely ignored. Just be glad you haven't had to shoot anyone yet. She followed up quickly before moving her tail out of the way and gesturing for him to leave. As he walked into the courtyard, everyone was standing around. Someone had bought rum for this very occasion, so everyone was already starting to drink. Kristoff even came over and poured some rum directly into Lynx's coffee before she could argue. Come on. Ugh, she proclaimed as he laughed, pouring it in. Praxis stood around, mostly trying his best to enjoy himself, but his mind was set firmly on the clearing, on seeing Napalm again. Leaning against the war room wall, he heard footsteps inside. Soon they came to the door as it opened, and Jackdaw stepped out.
Hey, son.
I'm so sorry,
Hey, son. Happy birthday.
he said weakly. They hadn't exactly talked very much past their big fight over Napalm in Coven Ridge.
Thanks.
Praxis said sharply, crossing his arms and being as guarded as possible.
Nice of you to not miss it this time.
He followed closely with. The guilt was evident on Jackdaw's face as he looked down. He crossed his own arms and tried to think of conversation, but he couldn't. They stood like that for a couple minutes, neither of them saying anything until finally Jackdaw couldn't stand the awkwardness and walked back inside. The rest of the day went by rather quickly, with Praxis only making small talk. As the evening sun began to set, he decided it was finally time to go to the clearing. He had no idea if Napalm would even still be there this late, but he had to hope. Lynx already stood guard and gave him a little wave as he walked past her and towards his meeting spot. Like clockwork, Napalm was still there. He was shuffling around and tinkering with his sword. Each time they met, he started putting little notches on it, and they had met a lot of times by now.
Hey, Nape!
He shouted as he approached, startling Napalm out of his trance of staring at his sword. Hey, Praxi, what took you so long? I've been here for hours, he said, slightly sad, but still more than happy to see his boyfriend.
Sorry, it's my birthday, and I had to stick around and interact with friends.
He said dismissively, hoping Napalm wouldn't focus on the fact that it was his birthday. It's your birthday, he blurted out, immediately pacing. I didn't get you anything. He followed up with scratching the back of his neck, trying to think of something.
Nape, please. Your company is enough, and you got me chocolate.
Praxis pleaded to try and calm down Napalm. No, I need to get you something meaningful, he said, really trying to come up with an idea, and then he felt it. The rubbing of his bracelet that was softly making noise from the small trinket. In his head, it immediately made sense of what he had to do. He took off the bracelet, the first time he had since he was 7 years old, and walked over to Praxis. He reached out both of his hands to take, which Praxis did, though he looked a little confused about what was happening. Praxi, can I tell you a story? He said seriously, which did nothing but make Praxis nervous.
Sure?
Will you marry me? No. He panicked over his boyfriend's suddenly serious tone and the fact this is the first time he had ever seen him take off his bracelet. When I was a child, I had a sister. I don't remember much about her, not even her name. But she gave me this bracelet. She said she'd come find me, and she'd know it's me. Because, well, there's only one silver bracelet like this one. He said, laughing to himself, a little bit clearly nostalgic. The last time I saw her, I was 7. I was taken off to join the Nephalite military. I still believe she'll find me one day. But until then, I'm going to keep this bracelet on me. He finished, looking into Praxis's eyes as resolve filled him. He knelt down on one knee, instantly making Praxis let go of his right hand to cover his maw and gaslight. What the fuck? He actually is proposing!
You sniped it! You sniped it! I had like a little gasp when you did.
What the hell? Oh my god! Hang on!
Where are we at?
No. Praxis, I want you to take this bracelet. He said, holding it up, the bracelet slightly. Because I want you to always be with me. Always. I want you to take this and I want you to marry me. He said, looking up at him with those golden eyes. Praxis was stunned. He wasn't sure what to say, so he just asked the first question on his mind.
But, but how will your sister find you?
Because I want you to always be around me. So if she finds the bracelet, she'll still find me. Because it'll be with the person I love. Okay, Praxis stared at him, his mouth agape. He loved him. He said it. He actually said it.
I I love you too. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you.
Give me a second, chat. I'm fine.
I love them so much. Oh, cooked. We're not getting to this without crying, bro. It's over.
Okay. I'm not actually crying yet. I'm tearing up, and it's a
I
happy cry.
am.
I'm like, this is so sweet. He said as he started to cry from the overwhelming flood of emotions. Napalm quickly rose to his feet to comfort his new fiance. Hey, it's all right, he said reassuringly as he gently rubbed his hand with the back of his thumb. He put the bracelet around Praxis's right arm and tightened it so it would fit. It looked more natural on him than it ever did on Napalm, like it belonged there. Praxis gave it an experimental jangle. The small trinkets make a nice, almost musical sound.
It's perfect.
It's
Like
perfect.
you.
Dude, that's my line!
Oh, my fault. I thought I was saying that. Fuck. I'm too in the
No,
moment. Sorry. Let me
twin,
sit the fuck
I'm
down.
not perfect. You're perfect,
Oh,
okay?
thank you, twin. I love you too.
It's perfect. Like you, Napalm said, looking at his partner with more love than he had anything else in his life. He caressed Praxis's face and wiped away his tears with his thumb. Pulling him into a tender kiss, they both stayed there for a long moment, just enjoying each other's company for as long as they could. The sun was now fully set, and the only light in the clearing was from the moon watching over them.
I better get going soon. People wonder where I've disappeared to on my birthday.
He said, pulling back slightly and wiping away the few remaining tears he had left. His tail flicked back and forth from happiness. Yeah, go. I'll be here again tomorrow. All right, Napalm said, giving a smile and letting Praxis slowly back away from the clearing and back to camp. The next few weeks were filled with ideas of weddings and what they wanted. They both agreed heavily that they'd get a gecko and name him Joey, which, though which type and also how exactly to find a gecko was a debate of serious discussion. The day was New Year's. They had both spent time sitting in the clearing, not wanting to leave, and as Praxis lay against Napalm's chest, staring up at the stars, he passed out. Napalm followed shortly after. The last thing Praxis heard as he fell asleep was Napalm whispering in his ear, I promise you, Praxi, I'll never leave you alone. I'll always be by your side. They awoke slowly together on January 1st, starting the new year off in each other's arms.
So you see the title of chapter 8 though. You see the title of chapter 8.
Stop it.
I'm
Stop
not
it.
going to stop it because I'm going to start crying if I don't try to I got to
Okay. Okay, let's log in. We got this, alright?
lock in,
Chapter
lock
8,
in.
here we go. Chapter 8, Coven Ridge. Praxis groaned as he slowly raised himself up off Napalm and the grass beneath him. His back ached slightly from sleeping at such a weird angle. Morning, sleepyhead, Napalm said after he sat up.
What happened?
Give me a second. I feel like I have to burp.
Hey, what happened?
It's like it's like in my chest but not coming out. Okay. I'm just gonna keep going until it finally does. Praxis asked, a little confused on where he was. He wasn't entirely used to waking up not in his bunk with all his squad mates. You passed out while we were stargazing. You snore loudly, by the way. He teased Praxis.
Hey, I do not. Oh, fuck. I gotta get back to camp.
He said, quickly scrambling to his feet and tripping over himself. It was clear by Napalm's face that he had much the same reaction to the news. Ah, me too. I gotta run. I'll write to you, he said quickly, but with a smile on his face. Then he ran off towards Coven Ridge. Praxis quickly grabbed his pouches he had taken off the previous night for comfort. and as he was reattaching them, he suddenly heard a loud bang from the direction Napalm had run off to, then a scream of pain. Praxis shot up straight, quickly grabbing his rifle and running towards the direction he heard the shot from. What the hell?
I
Okay,
already, I'm
quick pause.
already sad.
Quick pause, by the way, for K-Cobb, because hearing saying Coven Ridge reminds me. K-Cobb, I didn't see you in chat yesterday. I don't even know if you were watching the stream, but I want you to know that this motherfucker has been letting me say Coven Ridge the entire, what was it, 6 chapters, and I only realized it was Coven Ridge after he said it himself. Yeah, did you see this motherfucker?
You were saying it with an accent, so it sounded right because I was like, oh, with the accent, you were like, oh, Coven Ridge. I was like, oh, well, you're saying it right, so I didn't hear it wrong. I didn't.
Oh my god. Anyways. Okay, fuck. Once
It's
he
like
reached
her.
the open pathway outside of the woods, he saw something that was horrific. Napalm was clutching his shoulder as a golden dragonborn stood opposite him with his flintlock pistol smoking. Praxis stood frozen, and then the golden spoke.
Lieutenant Napalm Dresker, I always knew you were a traitor.
He barked at him, Hollis stirring his pistol and walking closer to Napalm. Neither of them had noticed Praxis quite yet, and he was still frozen in horror. Ugh, fucking Captain Vorkath. Vorkath?
Yeah, I just say Kath.
Vorkath. Ugh, fucking Captain Vorkath. Yeah. I thought I saw you snooping around, Napalm said, trying to hold in the blood from his wound. Actually, quick pause again. As I was saying that line, I want you to know I was holding my shoulder as if I was actually covering a bullet wound trying to stop it from bleeding.
God.
I just realized. Anyways, go ahead.
I've always hated you, Dresker. You should have been born gold, and you failed that. Now, I'm gonna take the only part of you that is.
He said, immediately pouncing forward and tackling Napalm to the ground, then punched him across the muzzle, chipping a few teeth. He pulled back slightly and proudly displayed 3 sharpened claws on his right hand. He reeled back and launched forward directly into Napalm's left eye. The wet crunch was all Praxis could see as blood swept around Vorkath's finger. His 2 claws broke the brow scale and the scales under his eye, causing Napalm to scream out in pain. Seeing his fiancée in pain, Praxis finally unfroze. His mouth and throat filled with blue lightning, and it shot forward and struck directly into Captain Vorkath's side, pushing him off of Napalm and stumbling backwards in pain.
Ugh, what? Plasmite scum!
He shouted, finally seeing Praxis. He quickly raised his rifle and aimed at Vorkath. His hands were shaking, and he couldn't think straight. He wanted to check on Napalm. He was still alive, at least. He clutched the eye that he just lost as blood flowed through his fingers and down his hands. Seeing Praxis stare at Napalm, Vorkath took this opportunity to run. He had enough evidence to confirm a plasmite presence here. Praxis's breathing was staggered. He couldn't stop fumbling with the trigger, and he couldn't get a precise aim. After a minute, and the distance growing further and further, Napalm slowly rose. I can't let him get away. Get back to camp, Praxi. I'll see you soon, okay? He didn't wait for a reply, as he already began running after Captain Vorkath. He ran as fast as he could, ignoring the searing pain in his shoulder and eye. Slowly, he caught up. Praxis' breath weapon had done serious damage to Vorkath. They got closer and closer to Coven Ridge. All that the captain needed to do was shout about a plasmite presence, and the last months of progress would be lost. Praxis would be found and killed, and Napalm couldn't let that happen. Just outside the gates of Coven Ridge, a massive steel door guarded by many Nephthalites, which included red and green dragonborn. The captain stopped. He looked like he was about to shout something, but thankfully for Napalm, he reached him just in time. He couldn't do this quietly, not where he was, not with the current situation.
Help! There's a.
The captain's voice was cut off by Napalm's sword piercing through his throat from behind, spraying blood forward all over the door. Immediately, the entire ridge went into high alert. Tens of soldiers came out and surrounded Napalm. On the wall, tons of guns all aimed down at him. He quickly put a hand up in surrender, the other coming to hold his eye, which was still slowly seeping blood. Praxis ran into base camp, past Lynx, who was confused at his sudden arrival back to camp after being missing from the previous night, and why he looked so upset. Immediately running directly to the war room, not bothering to knock, he barged in. Inside, Jackdaw, Kristoff, and a face Praxis wasn't expecting to see, Commander Carlyle. They all looked up at him as he heaved from the lack of breath.
Napalm's in danger.
He shouted, hoping one of them would react as scared as he was, but no. They all seemed to remain calm. I think this is Captain Carlyle.
It appears your informant has been compromised, Jack. That's fine. We move now. Alert the troops.
He said, then reached over and picked up a little rat figurine that was new to Praxis.
You used a rat figure to identify napalm.
He said in total disbelief.
Well, of course, if the shoe fits.
Carlyle said with a chuckle, chucking the piece into the bin. He then followed up with,
He served his purpose. Good job keeping him under your spell, Praxis. You are looking at a good promotion.
He said, he joked, his tone sarcastic.
Praxis, come on, let's talk outside.
Jackdaw said quickly said, seeing his son was about to explode at the commander. Quickly grabbing him by the arm, Jackdaw pulled Praxis outside and shut the door behind him.
Hey, so what happened? Explain it to me.
He seemed genuinely panicked all of a sudden, like he was letting the general mask drop.
He got attacked. They knew the place of our camp, so he went off to chase him. I could have shot the captain, but I froze.
He explained, his tears already starting, mixing with furious rage at Commander Carlyle's jokey attitude.
Hey, Praxis, calm. Okay? Calm. He's okay. He'll be okay.
He reassured his son. He knew Napalm wasn't a slouch. He could take a captain.
Listen, go find Lynx. It's gonna be a big announcement tomorrow. We'll find Napalm, okay? Just believe me, please, son.
He pleaded. He needed his son to be okay, at least for now. Praxis nodded quickly before disappearing off to find Lynx. She was still at the front gate, as confused as she was when he ran past her a moment ago.
Rags, you okay? You didn't come back to base last night,
she asked, seriously concerned about why he was crying.
Napalm's in danger, and there's nothing I can do, Lynx. I had my shot and I fucked it.
Hearing this immediately put her into panic mode.
What? Nap's in danger. What's Jackdaw doing?
She demanded.
Nothing. We've got some big operations tomorrow. Needs to wait.
He said through his tears, leaning against the wall for support.
That's bullshit. What? Fuck!
She shouted, just as angry as Praxis was. She and Napalm didn't interact too often, but they had grown to be friends. She was worried, especially for Praxis's sake. Before she could continue to get angrier, a voice cut through Kristoff's.
Praxis, Lynx, get to the courtyard now. We got a briefing.
They both looked at each other skeptically. Praxis quickly wiped away the leftover tears as both him and Lynx made their way to the courtyard. Once they were there, they saw everyone all lined up in their positions. On stage were
Oh, it came out. Oh god, there it is again.
Nice one.
On stage were Jackdaw, Kristoff, and of course Commander Carlyle taking the lead. Praxis and Link quickly filed into their spots and watched, waiting to learn about whatever this operation was that started tomorrow. Commander Carlyle quickly cleared his throat before speaking out to the Jackdaw squad.
All right, listen up. As a lot of you have been questioning, why are you here? You've been stationed waiting over 6 months without reason. Well, today, I'm giving you that reason. Coving Ridge.
He paused, letting everyone absorb the name. He said it with emphasis, enough so everyone knew it was important before he continued.
It's a Nephthalite fortress, said to be impenetrable, but with the help of a spy on the inside, we have gained valuable information. There's a plateau about Coven Ridge. For the past 4 months, Percy Squad, Lincoln Squad have been slowly stashing cannons, rifles, ammo, and most importantly, mortars up there. Yes, that's right. Martyrs you'd see on a ship.
The crowd began to whisper to one another questions of how, why, and how does this involve them?
Now, many of you will be thinking about how this is going to involve the Jackdaw Squad. Well, it's simple. Everything's been brought into place, but someone needs to pull the trigger. That will be your lot. This is Jackdaw's plan, so you get to be the one to actually take out Coven Ridge. We're expecting Nephthalite casualties to be in the mid 500s. Get ready, soldiers. We head out tomorrow.
Carlyle finished with a clap of his hands, then shouting,
Dismissed.
which made everyone's rigid tension ease slightly, but not fully. People were now nervous. It had been a while since any of them saw real combat. It was mostly just training and drills, which now made a lot more sense with the newly added context of what all of it would be used for. Praxis stood frozen. He knew more than anyone else here that this was the end goal. With casualties in the 500s. Would napalm be one of them? He questioned himself in his mind. He was snapped out of it. He was snapped out of his trance by Link swiping her tail into him.
Hey, Prax, come on, let's try and relax a little. Maybe we can go check the clearing?
She suggested, even though she was worried about napalm. It was obvious. Praxis nodded, any excuse to check, any excuse to hope. They both headed out almost immediately. The clearing really wasn't far away, and it wasn't like Praxis wasn't just there. But when they got there, the place was empty, totally and utterly. Praxis almost immediately broke out in tears and collapsed in on himself, with his hand coming up to twist the bracelet on his wrist over and over. The soft clinking of the trinkets was a small comfort. It sounded like napalm. His wrist always had the soft clinking of silver on silver. Lynx, however, was in full investigation mode. She followed the trail out to the pathway where Napalm and Vorkath had fought. There was so much blood everywhere, and what was worrying was the fact that other Dragonborn hadn't received any wounds that would bleed. Only Napalm did. She thought of following the drip trail of blood, but she knew that would just lead directly to Coven Ridge. She couldn't risk it, so she headed back to the clearing. Spotting Praxis sitting with his arms wrapped around his legs, crying, wasn't exactly what she wanted. She was pissed, and he was sad, and neither could do anything.
Come on, Prax. There must be something we can do,
she shouted as she began pacing, her tail lashing wildly across the grass, flattening it.
There's nothing to do, Lynx. Jackdaw said to wait.
He replied, rubbing one of his eyes, trying anything to stop the tears.
Fuck your dad. We need to do something,
she shouted to the trees around her more so than to Praxis. He still flinched a little before speaking.
Lynx, why? There's nothing we can do,
he said, defeated. He had failed to take his shot.
Because out of the 4 years I've known you, this is the happiest I've ever seen you. Fuck. Because out of the 4 years I've known you, the happiest I've ever seen you was with him. I can't just let you be miserable,
she said. Her own tears began before she quickly wiped them away. She stopped pacing and went to sit down next to Praxis. She was still frustrated. She wanted to fix this.
You don't need to do so much, Lynx.
Yeah, well, nobody else seems to be, so yeah, I do,
she replied as soon as Praxis finished. She was tired, frustrated, and above all else, angry at the fact that they didn't know where Napalm even was. Praxis reached over and gripped her left forearm and gently rubbed her scales. None were as jagged as Napalm's, but it was enough to feel calm, and it clearly also made Lynx calm a little as well. It was silently agreed that they'd stay until two things happened. Napalm returns, or they have to leave for Coven Ridge. Sky turned orange, then gray, and then black. Neither slept. They stayed up all night and morning. And morning broke. And as morning broke, Napalm hadn't returned still.
Prax, I think it's time,
Lynx said softly. The anger in her had long faded, and she had more than enough time to come to a conclusion. She didn't speak it out loud, but Praxis knew the same things she did. Neither spoke as they walked back to camp. Everyone was setting up and preparing to head out.
Weapons were at the ready as the route was explained, a small winding path that the majority of Nephilites didn't know about, and those that did thought wasn't exploitable, so was mostly left unpatrolled. But with the help of Napalm's information, they managed to map out a safe-ish path through the winding road up to the plateau. Praxis and Lynx went up and got brand new flintlock rifles and pistols. These new weapons had superior rifling and a sight on the rifle for long range.
Lynx, Praxis, you two are on sniping duty. Any Nephilites trying to run, you shoot,
Kristoff said, handing them their weapons. Praxis inspected his rifle. It was way higher quality than his regular standard issued one, but it seemed almost fragile in places. Hopefully they wouldn't break, he thought while inspecting the barrel. Engraved on the wooden stock was the words Prower Arms Company, which did inspire some confidence.
Fuse
They
mentioned.
sold the best weapons.
Sorry. That's another one of my characters mentioned.
They sold the best weapons in the entire Sparklands. Seems they favored the plasmites for this battle. After kitting up, everyone began their march. There were 53 members of the Jackdaw squad left, and by the end of this, they were hoping for 0 casualties on their end. As they climbed up the awkward sections of the cliff, Praxis thought how'd they managed to get mortars and cannons up here. It was hard enough just by foot, but when he reached the top, he saw his answer. He saw winches and crane setups constructed in the wooden section of the plateau. Walking forward, he saw the extent of the armament. It was like someone deconstructed an entire man-o warship and turned it into a massive siege weapon. It was overwhelming. Lynx stood frozen as she looked out over the cliff and at the massive fortress that was Coven Ridge. It was well guarded, but the top was exposed. They never expected to be attacked from the top, and that was clear by how exposed it was for the mortars. Prax, you seeing this? She stammered out, taking a step back from the edge and gripping onto his arm.
Whoa, stay stable, Lynx. Napalm's in there. Napalm's somewhere in there. We'll get him out.
He said with conviction. He was determined that he was still alive. He had promised he wouldn't leave him after all. Oh, the promise! Okay. Scanning the area, he couldn't see the familiar red dragonborn, so he assumed he'd be inside somewhere or near the back where the sight line wasn't clear. I hope you're right, Prax. By the gods, I feel like I'm gonna be sick. I hate heights so, she said, shooting a hand up to cover her mouth. She'd never been this high up before. The air was thin, and the amount of stomping of feet from other dragonborn was a little overwhelming. Suddenly, a loud voice carried over the crowd.
All right, everyone, we're getting into position. We open fire in 10.
Lynx, Jackdaw shouted out, directing people into position. Lynx and Praxis laid down at the edge of plateau away from the mortars and cannons and aimed down for people trying to run away. They took deep breaths, and then they heard the whistle, and a couple seconds after the first cracks of the mortars, as in front of them, explosives rained down upon the camp. The people inside began to panic and rushed around, but as soon as they stepped through the gates to run, they were shot down with the new fancy rifles. Praxis wasn't entirely accurate with his shots, and it took over 12 seconds to reload, but nobody escaped. Everyone in Coven Ridge would die. There was no changing that now. It took over 5 days. They swapped back and forth with the Percy squad to make sure there wasn't a single stop in the offense. The mortars didn't stop until the metal they were made of started to melt from the heat. Coven Ridge was mostly rubble, and as everything stopped firing, nothing inside moved.
Everyone pack up your weapons. We're heading in.
Jackdaw called out as everyone's constantly ringing ears. The march back down was far easier than the way up. As Praxis approached the steel gates, his heart sank. He hoped that Napalm had survived that assault. There's no way he couldn't have survived, said Praxis in his thoughts. He quickly gripped onto the bracelet for reassurance before stepping through the steel gates of Coven Ridge.
This shit's about to fuck me up so bad, I'm already crying.
Alright.
I have to act this whole thing out, by the way. Oh, this is gonna be so fucking bad.
Here you go.
I'm locked in. I swear. I'm not.
Epilogue. Gifts of chocolate and letters. I'm scared. Praxis walked through the ridge. There were bodies littered everywhere. He checked each and every one just in case it might be napalm, but none were. There were a couple other plasmites with him, but none seemed as invested in checking the bodies as he was. The camp was decimated with broken buildings. Fortifications were bashed and destroyed by cannon fire and mortars. It was like walking through hell with the amount of bodies and blood. It seeped through Praxis' claws on his feet. The mud was unbearable, and it was more than clear that it wasn't water that mixed with the dirt to make it. It hadn't rained after all. His breath was shaking. The smell was unbearable, but he couldn't back down. Not yet. Not until he saw him. Not until he knew napalm was okay. Praxis reached the back of the camp. This area had been mostly left unscathed, as it was just out of reach of the mortars. He looked up at one of the poles in the back that was used for prisoners, and then he saw him.
Nape?
He asked as tears began to stream down only one eye. In front of him was napalm, tied by the wrist to one of the poles. His eye hadn't been bandaged. His wound was still open in his shoulder, but more important, he had new wounds. 5 to be exact across his chest. Bullets from a firing squad.
We're dead. We're cooked.
He hung limply. Shut up. The life having long left him. Praxis immediately ran over and pulled out his dagger to cut him down. He fell onto the ground as Praxis cut the restraints. He felt cold beneath Praxis's touch.
You promised. You promised you wouldn't leave me.
He begged it. Oh fuck. He begged as his claws touched over the bullet wounds in Napalm's chest. The tears began to flow fully from Praxis as he hugged his dead fiance's corpse.
You promised, Nape. You promised.
Praxis began saying it over and over, like it would be able to somehow bring him back. The other plasmites around watched the scene unsure of what to do, until someone finally came forward and tried to help. Praxis, son, Jackdaw said softly as he approached his broken child. He'd never seen him like this before. Praxis didn't even look up. He started caressing Napalm's face as he begged over and over again for him to come back, to keep his promise to stay with him.
We were gonna live together. We were gonna run away.
He shouts through his never-ending stream of tears. His voice was raw and rough from the overwhelming emotions. Jackdaw kneeled down next to Praxis and Napalm. I'm so sorry, son. He's dead. There's nothing you can do. He gently grabbed Praxis' arm, trying to reassure it, but it didn't work. He pushed Jackdaw back. Praxis' eyes never left Napalm as he laid lifeless before them. Jackdaw sat down and gave Praxis a few minutes. He didn't stop whispering and begging Napalm to come back. But it didn't work. His prayers were left unanswered, and soon Kristoff came over to the duo. General Jackdaw, we've confirmed. No survivor, and only one golden dragonborn is left unaccounted for. He said, looking down at Praxis with pity in his eyes. He didn't comment. He knew that wasn't what his friend needed at this time. Thanks, Kristoff. Round everyone up and bring them back to camp. I need to do something, he commanded before turning his attention back to his son. Kristoff nodded and walked away and began to gather everyone up.
We were gonna get married, Dad. We planned on leaving, finding a small home somewhere out west.
He choked out barely. His tears were overwhelming. Jackdaw gave his son a few extra seconds before finally asking,
He was family then. We treat our family correctly. You two have a favorite place?
Praxis slowly sat up on his knees and took a couple deep breaths, trying to be able to get the words out.
Yeah, the small clearing just past our camp.
He said, stammering through each and every word.
Yeah, I think I know the one. Come on, let's give him peace.
Jackdaw rose to his feet and walked over to Napalm, scooping an arm under his legs, and one behind his back. He picked him up. Napalm's arm hung limply in front of Praxis. He reached forward and held his hand as Jackdaw held him, gently squeezing it. Praxis broke down even harder as he held his partner's hand one final time.
Lead the way, son.
Jackdaw said, and Praxis did. His hand never left Napalm's. He was leading him to the clearing one final time, like he did all that time ago. The trees swayed gently with the soft breeze that blew through the clearing. The clearing was like it always was. A perfect place for Nape and Praxi to meet. To spend days together outside of the thoughts of war, where they could just be enough for each other. Praxis fell to his knees as the memories all flooded back. First kiss, the breath weapon training, the stargazing, holding hands, was his favorite thing to do. He looked at Napalm deeply. His hand was holding his tightly, but unlike usual Napalm, he couldn't grip back. Fuck. Jackdaw looked at his son. He could see the pain on his face.
This the place?
He asked in a soft tone, the general persona long gone, and he would never, ever pick it back up again. Praxis nodded as he laid Napalm against the tree. The same tree he would occasionally lean against while he was waiting for Praxis. He left Praxis alone for a few minutes as he went to get a shovel and a sword. Jackdaw dug the grave alone. He didn't want his son to have to do anything right now, and Praxis couldn't stop staring at Napalm anyway. Once the grave was dug, Jackdaw picked Napalm up. I needed to. I had to. I had to. And placed him down into the grave.
Anything you'd like to place with him?
He asked Praxis. He couldn't think, his hand gently pulling at the bracelet on his wrist.
No, I I need to keep this bracelet. I'll find his sister with it.
He said a little clearer, but his voice was still shaky.
Okay, kid. Okay.
Jackdaw stood after placing the sword he grabbed into the grave with Napalm, a tradition meant only for family, and gave his son time to have one last final look at the love of his life.
I love you. Write to me.
He asked as the grave was finally filled.